I should have known better, but love makes you do irrational things. It clouds judgment and makes you blind to consequences. I never believed in all that supernatural crap before, but what happened, what I let happen, changed everything. Lupita's eyes were hollow after the miscarriage. Our baby was gone, and so was her living spirit. It had been months since she last left the bathroom. Her sad, vacant eyes were in a constant quest for hope. Watching her spiral was a torture of its kind. Helplessly devastated, I had tried everything. Therapy, medication, time alone, time together, but nothing could pull her back. I couldn't stand seeing the love of my life wither right in front of me, haunted by the loss of a child we both wanted so desperately. So when Greg mentioned an odd, uncomfortable solution, I hopped on it. "You know, Jack, there's this thing," he said hesitantly. "They call it a humanized doll." "A doll?" I deadpanned. "Not just any doll. It'll be like the child you were supposed to have." The solution was ridiculous, but a solution nonetheless. In seconds, the order was booked. I'll never forget the day the package arrived. It was a plain brown box, no label, no return address, just sitting on the doorstep like a malignant tumor. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a doll so lifelike it made my breath hitch. It had Lupita's soft brown eyes, my sharp nose, and the hint of a smile that was almost too real. When Lupita saw it, the wall cracked. She cradled the doll like it was flesh and blood, cooing to it. For the first time in weeks, I had seen her smile. My heart swelled with relief. Maybe this would help her heal. Little did I know it was the last moment of peace in our house. The first night I woke to find her in the rocking chair, the doll pressed against her chest. I thought it was a good sign. She was talking to it, humming softly, like any mother would. But as the days wore on, it became clear that this wasn't helping. It was something darker, something unexplainably wrong. Very soon, my wife stopped eating, sleeping, or talking. She spent every waking moment with that doll, feeding it, changing diapers. She named it Baby Blue. I didn't understand why, but I didn't dare ask, too afraid of what she might say. But it wasn't until the night she came at me with a knife that I realized how far gone she was. "Stop it, Peta. This ain't real," I snapped, only to watch her face twist into a monstrous snarl I'd never seen before. The woman who lunged at me wasn't my Lupita. She was Baby Blue's mommy, consumed, body and soul. As I stumbled backward, my eyes flicked to the doll, and I froze. Baby Blue's glassy eyes seemed to shimmer with a dark intelligence, and its tiny mouth curled into a sinister grin. The room felt colder. Was she possessed? That afternoon, I decided to stay home and watch. Everything went smoothly until night fell. It must have been around 1 in the morning, and I had just drifted off to sleep when the fire alarm went off. I jolted awake to find the kitchen filled with smoke. Lupita had left a kettle on the stove and completely forgot about it.
"He was crying. He has been telling me I'm a bad mother,"
she cried, clutching Baby Blue to her chest. My blood ran cold. The doll couldn't cry. It was impossible. But she insisted, her voice rising in pitch, growing hysterical. I tried to snap her out of it, yelling that the doll wasn't real, that it was all in her head, but she wouldn't listen. Her face went pale, and she passed out, cradling the doll like it was a real child. I rang the hospital, and help arrived. It might have been 4 in the morning when a strange noise filled the whole house. It was a sound that made my skin crawl, a faint, muffled cry like a baby. My heart pounded in my chest as I listened, holding my breath. It was coming from the nursery. My hands trembled as I pushed open the door, and there, in the dim light, I saw it. The doll was crying. I stared at it, horror-stricken, as the soft wailing sound filled the room. The doll's eyes, Lupita's eyes, glowed red, tiny pinpricks of light in the darkness. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as I approached it. My heart raced as I picked it up, and the crying stopped abruptly. My hands shook as I examined it, feeling something hard beneath its synthetic skin. I tore it open, the synthetic flesh giving way under my hands, and found a small black device nestled inside. It was a camera. That means we were being watched this whole time? A sickening realization washed over me as I dug deeper. The people who were spying on us had turned Lupita's life into a twisted form of entertainment. I gathered the evidence, the doll and the camera, and contacted the authorities. We filed charges for invasion of privacy, harassment, and emotional distress. The cybercrime department tried to trace the website, but it led to a block. People who use dark web are masters in hiding and staying in the dark. I was warned strictly for choosing to buy items from the illegal front of the internet. We changed house and phone numbers to stay away from further stalkers. Lupita is still undergoing psychiatric counseling to deal with the loss of our child and the trauma caused by that doll. All I have understood is that grief is the love which has nowhere to go, but we shouldn't let it decide our lives. As long as we're alive, we must keep living. Moving forward is the real meaning of life, no matter how many storms try to knock you down. I lost my job on a cold Tuesday evening, just as Christmas was approaching. The dim light of my laptop flickered in my dingy apartment as I stared at the dreadful email.
Dear Tyra, we're sorry to inform you that due to unforeseen circumstances...
My stomach twisted into a knot. The rent was 2 months overdue, and Mr. Richard, my landlord, had given me a week's deadline to come up with the money or face eviction. I had no savings, no backup plan, and now the reality of being unemployed in a city like LA nearly crushed me.
I won't give up.
Determination and desperation led me to Craigslist. Scrolling through endless ads, each one more dubious than the last, I came across an opening. A massage parlor was looking for a masseuse. The pay was good, and they only assigned one client a day. Less work, more money. It seemed perfect. Too perfect, maybe, but I was desperate. So I clicked apply. To my surprise, the response was immediate. The next morning, I arrived at the provided address. It was a small, nondescript building squeezed between a boarded-up deli and a laundromat with flickering neon lights. A petite blonde woman greeted me at the door, barefoot, grinning eye to eye.
Miss Tyra?
She asked.
Yeah, that's me. You must be Daphne. Yes. Please, follow me.
She led me down a narrow hallway to a small room at the back. It was dimly lit, with heavy curtains blocking out any natural light. The air was thick with the scent of lavender and something else. Something metallic that made my stomach churn. My unease deepened when I saw the massage table in the center of the room. A man was already lying face down. His white hair was stark against the dark sheets. He looked old and frail, like he'd been lying there for ages. Daphne gestured toward him.
This is Mr. Granger, your client for today. Just focus on his shoulders. They're very sore.
I nodded, trying to ignore the tightness in my chest.
Okay. One more thing.
She added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper.
You must be barefoot while you work. Why? It's a rule.
She replied, as if it was a general practice to make your employee work barefoot. My skin prickled at the thought, but I forced a smile and nodded.
Sure. No problem.
Daphne left the room. I slipped off my shoes, the cold tile sending a shiver up my spine, and moved toward Mr. Granger. I introduced myself, trying to ease the tight knot of tension in my gut, but he didn't respond. The only sound were his labored breathing and the soft whimpers escaping his lips as I started massaging his shoulders. The silence grew heavy as the clock ticked and the room's temperature seemed to drop. Half an hour had passed without incident when suddenly the lights flickered. The room was bathed in crimson, casting an eerie glow across everything. My heart skipped a beat, and I froze. Then I heard it. Faint at first, but growing louder. It was the unmistakable sound of children's voices, singing nursery rhymes, their laughter echoing off the walls. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. This wasn't just strange. It was wrong. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I was frozen in place, my mind racing with all the terrible possibilities. Suddenly, I felt something cold and wet against my feet. It was so startling that I let out a small shriek and jerked my foot back. I looked down, expecting to see water, but what I saw instead made my blood run cold. A thin, viscous liquid was pooling around my toes. My heart pounded in my chest. What was this place, and why was everything about it so off? "Don't!" a voice rasped, breaking the silence. Mr. Granger had growled. I stumbled back, the tray of massage oil clattering to the floor. I hesitated, torn between obeying his command and the overwhelming urge to see what was happening. Curiosity won out. Slowly, I bent down and peered under the table, and that's when I saw it. His face twisted into a grotesque grin, eyes wide with a sickening gleam, and his mouth dripping with saliva. He was literally drooling on my feet, and the way he looked at my feet, like he was savoring a twisted fantasy, made my skin crawl. My breath hitched, panic setting in as the room seemed to close in on me. Without thinking, I turned and bolted for the door, my feet slipping on the tile as I fumbled with the handle. The children's laughter grew louder, more distorted. I finally wrenched the door open and sprinted down the hallway, not daring to look back. I didn't stop running until I was outside. I didn't bother with my shoes. Running was the only thing that made sense, bare feet slapping against the wet pavement. The parlor called several times after that, but I never answered. I packed a bag and moved in with my brother, crashing on his couch until I found a new job, one that didn't involve creepy old men and their disgusting fantasies. But the memory of that day lingers, that follows me wherever I go. And sometimes, late at night, I can still hear the faint echo of children's laughter, which makes me wonder if I'll ever truly escape. I never thought my life would spiral into a nightmare that felt ripped from a thriller novel. My name is Marsha, and I'm a 24-year-old swimsuit model based in Miami. With sun-kissed skin and long, wavy brown hair, I've always loved the ocean and the freedom it brings. Modeling seemed like a natural path. My family, however, didn't share my enthusiasm, especially Liam, my older brother. Ever since I started modeling, he'd warned me about the sickos and creeps in the industry. My dad was equally overprotective. Our conversations often ended in tense silence. I brushed off his concerns as typical sibling worry, not realizing how he was actually right. One afternoon, as I lounged on my balcony overlooking the bustling streets below, my phone buzzed. A Snapchat notification from an account named Watcher7. Odd. I didn't recall adding anyone by that name. The message read, "Hope you liked the gift I sent." Confused, I ignored it, assuming it was a misdirected message or some spam. Days went by and I forgot about the odd snap until a thick envelope appeared at my doorstep. Inside were printed photos, pictures of me from my private Snapchat stories. My heart raced. How did someone get those? Worst yet, it was Liam who received the envelope. "This is exactly what I was warning you about. You need to quit this modeling nonsense and focus on something real."
You think this is about modeling? Someone invaded my privacy.
Our argument escalated. Liam stormed out, leaving me alone with a mix of fear and frustration. The snaps from Watcher7 continued. Photos of me on dates with guys I'd met online, candid shots from across restaurants, even grainy images of me through hotel windows. Each one sent chills down my spine. How was someone following me so closely without me noticing? One night, as I returned to my apartment, I sensed something was off. The air felt heavy. I glanced around. My favorite seashell necklace was on the coffee table, though I swore I'd left it in my bedroom. The window was slightly ajar, letting in a cool breeze that fluttered the curtains.
Hello? Is anyone here?
Silence. I checked every room, every closet. Nothing. But the unease lingered. Desperate for help, I reached out to Alex, an IT guy I'd been chatting with on a dating app. We went out a few times, clicked, but never really dated.
Alex, I think someone's stalking me. They have access to my private snaps and photos of me everywhere I go.
That's serious. We need to check your devices and security at home. He came over the next day, bringing equipment to scan for any breaches. As he waved a device around my bedroom, it beeped near a bookshelf filled with travel guides and old photo albums. There's something here. We pulled the shelf away to reveal a tiny camera, meticulously hidden between the books.
Oh my god. How did that get there? Whom does it belong to?
Let me try to find out. He worked his tech magic, and within minutes, he looked up, eyes wide. The IP address it's connected to, it's local. Very local.
What do you mean?
It's coming from your place. Like your father's place. Anyone in your family who could have easy access to the cameras?
My father. He works in security.
I felt the room spin. That couldn't be right. My father was protective, yes, but this? Determined to confront him, I drove to our parents' house and confronted my dad, but he just looked flummoxed. He swore on his dead mother that he did not do it. But then, almost instantly, all of us understood that it could only be Liam. I found him in the garage, tinkering with his motorcycle.
Why are you spying on me?
He looked up, expression unreadable. I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't play dumb. I found the camera, the photos. It's all coming from you.
His facade cracked. Well, you weren't listening. I had to make you see the dangers. This was for your own good.
You've been stalking me.
Our father, a quiet man with graying hair and tired eyes, stepped in after me. Liam's face twisted with anger. She's throwing her life away. Someone had to protect her. Father's gaze hardened. Without warning, our father slapped Liam across the face. In about 10 minutes, I will call 911. You have that much time to gather whatever it is that you need and get out from my home. That is all you deserve from me. Liam glared at both of us, eyes wild. You'll regret this. He shoved past me, storming out of the garage. I stood there, tears streaming down my face.
How did I not see this coming?
My father simply hugged me, a comfortable, warm hug. It has been over 4 years now since we saw Liam. I am a successful model. I still visit my dad frequently, and I am just trying to heal, surrounded by genuine people who care. I saw Alex for some time, but it didn't work out. We're still good friends, but Liam remained a shadow in my past, a reminder of how quickly brotherly love can turn into something dark and dangerous. The night was thick with humidity, the kind that clung to your skin and made you wish for a cold shower. My blind date had been a disaster. He was rude, dismissive, and when I politely declined his offer for a nightcap, he simply shrugged and told me to find my way home. It was late, and I didn't want to argue, so I left without another word, regretting every moment I had wasted on him. I walked through the empty streets, my heels clicked against the pavement. The city was eerily quiet, the warm air pressed against me, and I could feel sweat trickling down my back. I spotted a 7-Eleven up ahead, its fluorescent lights harsh and uninviting, but I needed a drink, something cold to calm my nerves. As I pushed open the door, a bell chimed above me. The store was deserted, save for a clerk who was slumped over the counter, half asleep, and a man lurking between the aisles. He was tall, with greasy, unkempt hair and clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. His eyes were on me the moment I walked in, tracking my movements like a predator sizing up its prey. I tried to ignore him, but I could feel his gaze burning into my back as I made my way to the coolers. I grabbed a bottle of water, my fingers trembling slightly as I twisted off the cap and took a long sip, hoping it would steady my nerves. The man was closer now, moving slowly, deliberately, as if savoring each step. I could hear his ragged breathing, the sound thick and wet like something was caught in his throat. My heart started to race. I turned to leave, but he was suddenly there, blocking my path. His eyes were wild and bloodshot, with a kind of manic intensity that made my skin crawl. He grinned, revealing yellowed teeth, and I could smell the sour stench of alcohol on his breath. "Hey there, pretty lady," he slurred, his voice a low rasp. "What's a girl like you doing out all alone at this hour?" I tried to step around him, but he moved to block me again, his grin widening. "How about we have some fun tonight, huh? I know some places. It'll be so fun." My stomach twisted in revulsion and I shook my head.
I'm not interested.
I tried to step around him again, but he leaned in closer, his hands brushing against my arm, leaving a cold, clammy sensation where he touched me. I recoiled. "Come on," he urged. "A little adventure is good sometimes."
I said no. Now get lost.
I pushed past him and hurried out the door, my breath coming in short, panic gasps. The warm night air felt suffocating after the chill of the store, but I started walking faster. I could still feel his eyes on me. I forced myself to keep moving, and then I heard it. Footsteps. They were heavy and uneven, shuffling behind me in a way that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I glanced over my shoulder, but the street was empty, just a long stretch of darkened buildings and dim streetlights. But I knew he was there, lurking in the shadows. I quickened my pace. Each step felt like it was dragging me closer to something terrible. The footsteps behind me grew louder and more insistent, and I could almost feel his presence closing in on me. I turned a corner, hoping to lose him, but the street was dark. That's when I started to run. I didn't care if I looked ridiculous. I just needed to get away. The footsteps were right behind me now, pounding against the pavement in a relentless pursuit. I risked another glance over my shoulder, and that's when I saw him. He was running after me, his face twisted in a grotesque mask of fury, his eyes wide and gleaming with a crazed light. He was close, too close, and I could see the wide grin stretched across his face. Panic surged through me, giving me a burst of speed as I sprinted toward my apartment building, the only safe place I could think of. The door was just ahead. I fumbled with my keys, still running. My hands shook so badly that I almost dropped them. I could hear him. I could feel his breath on the back of my neck, hot and foul. My vision blurred with tears. Then I heard the click. Seconds before his hands could reach me, I hurriedly threw myself inside. Slamming it shut behind me, I leaned against the door, gasping for breath. The silence of my apartment was almost deafening after the noise of the chase, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, just beyond the door, waiting. I moved to the window, peeking out from behind the curtain, and my heart nearly stopped. There he was, standing under the streetlight, staring up at my window with the same twisted grin on his face. His eyes locked onto mine. His madness transcended beyond the glass window to reach out and touch my soul. He smiled wider. I froze. "It was nice meeting you." I backed away from the window, and even though I was safe inside, the terror that gripped me told me otherwise. Because deep down, I knew the nightmare wasn't over, was it? When I was 13, my life was shattered. My dad died in a car accident, and just months later, my mom lost her long battle with cancer. In the blink of an eye, I was alone. The state decided I was too young to take care of myself, so they sent me to a foster home, an old mansion tucked away in a hilly forest. It was a place where I thought I could maybe find some peace, but instead, I saw something much darker. The mansion looked like something out of an old movie, tall with creaky floors and surrounded by thick, dark trees. Mrs. Damsel, who ran the place, was the foster mother and teacher for all kids. 10 other kids were living there, but they were off. They barely talked, moved around like robots, and ate candy like it was the only food they'd ever known. Not just the occasional piece. I'm talking bowls and bowls of the stuff for every snack. Mrs. Damsel had a few servants who helped her keep the place running, but one of them, Carl, stood out like a sore thumb. He was this creepy 50-year-old guy who had no business being around kids. He never knocked before entering our rooms, and he had this unsettling habit of watching us during meals, his eyes lingering a little too long. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something wasn't right about the way Carl interacted with us. He'd pop up out of nowhere, scaring us in the halls, and he always seemed to know what we were doing, even when we were supposed to be alone. The other kids didn't seem to notice, or if they did, they didn't care. They were too wrapped up in those damn candies. One night, I woke up to the sound of muffled crying. I crept out of bed and followed the noises to Luna's room. Luna was one of the quieter kids, always keeping to herself. When I peeked through the crack in her door, I saw Carl standing over her, whispering something. Luna was shaking, tears streaming down her face.
No, please. Not that again. I don't want to do this.
If you don't do what I say, you'll never get the magic candies again, Carl hissed. Luna's sobs grew louder, but she nodded, clearly terrified. I felt a chill run down my spine. Something was seriously wrong. The next day, I started keeping an eye on Carl, trying to figure out what he was up to. It didn't take long to piece things together. I noticed how the kids seemed to almost worship the candy, how they'd do almost anything for it, even things that made no sense, like cleaning Carl's shoes or giving him back rubs. One evening, I followed Carl to the pantry where he kept the candy. I waited until he left and then snuck in. That's when I found it, a stash of pills hidden behind the jars of sweets. Carl was drugging us through the candies, getting us hooked. And when the addiction got bad enough, he used it to control us, to make us do disgusting things for him. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Carl was a pedo, and Mrs. Damsel knew it. She was too scared to do anything about it, so she let it continue. I was furious, terrified, and most of all, determined to stop him. That night, I gathered the other kids. They were confused at first, their eyes glazed over from the candy, but I showed them the pills and told them what Carl had been doing. Slowly, the realization dawned on them too. The fear turned to anger. When Carl came into the room, he didn't see it coming. We all jumped on him, hitting, kicking, and doing anything to make him stop. He screamed, but we didn't stop until Mrs. Damsel rushed in, horrified by the scene. For the first time, she did the right thing. She called the cops. Carl was arrested that night. The mansion shut down soon after. We were all sent to a hospital for 6 months to get clean and to try to forget the horrors we'd lived through. It wasn't easy. Some of the kids took longer than others, but we all made it through. Now, I'm grown. I've moved on, or at least tried to. But every year on my birthday, I get cards and gifts from the kids who were at the mansion with me. From my friends, because that's what they became. Friends whose lives I saved, and who, in a way, saved mine too. Life goes on, but those memories never really leave you. Every time I see a piece of candy, I remember what happened in that old mansion up in the hills. And every time I get one of those cards in the mail, I know that we all made it out. We survived, and that's what matters. The night waters loomed before us, shrouded in an eerie silence that seemed to devour the sounds of the night. The once thriving water park, now abandoned and forsaken, oozed a sense of foreboding that made my skin crawl. I stole a glance at Jake, who was already eyeing me with a mix of skepticism and concern. As my childhood friend and business partner, he was well aware of the infamous mystery that clung to this place. "We're really doing this?" I asked, as we stared at the rusted gates. Jake shrugged, a cocky grin on his face. "We're just debunking a ghost story, right? Go ahead, open it." With a trembling hand, I turned the key. The gate creaked open. Maybe it was my imagination, but as we stepped inside, I felt the temperature plunge. The air grew thick with the stench of decay and stagnant water. Without warning, the wind roared to life, swirling through the park with a speed that felt otherworldly, as if driven by invisible hands. "Ginny!" Jake's voice trembled. "It's just the monsoon, don't worry." I could hardly finish my sentence.
Ginny.
I thought it was my mind playing some tricks. Inside, the park was eerily deserted. Weeds choked the pathways, and the slides and rides stood as mere skeletal remains. "Isn't it where they found her?" Jake asked, eyeing the pool. "Yes, Lilia Hawthorne, 20 years old, daughter of Vivian Hawthorne, the park's owner. They say she's still here, trying to seek revenge for her tragic end." I recounted the news where the reporter stated how mysteriously Lilia's lifeless body was found floating on the pool one morning. An icy shiver ran down my spine as I gazed at the pool. Once the park's crowning jewel, it now resembled a gaping abyss with its depths cloaked in a thick, grimy haze. Jake knelt at the edge, peering into the murky water. "Looks like rust," he muttered, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. Suddenly, a chilling gust of wind swept through, carrying another furious warning.
Leave before it's too late.
I shrieked and nearly toppled into the pool, my heart racing. Who's there?" I called out, my voice cracking. "Ginny, bro, what's wrong?" Jake's confusion was evident. None of us knew how it happened. The park came alive with a menacing energy. Lights flickered erratically, water began to flow with a disturbing rhythm, and the ground shifted, creating a surreal Milky Way sky above us. "What the?" Jake whispered, his fear palpable. Before I could respond, the voice returned, louder and filled with rage.
Go!
The lights stuttered and shadows danced in the corners of my vision. Panic gripped me. I grabbed Jake's arm and pulled him toward the exit. The park resisted. The paths twisted and turned, dragging us deeper into its nightmarish labyrinth. We stumbled upon the wave pool once more, but this time it was different. The water churned violently, and a figure began to emerge from its depths. It was Lilia, or what remained of her. A pale, bloated form with a terrifying, featureless face. Her presence was a heavy, suffocating force that pinned us to the spot. Jake, unable to resist, stepped closer, drawn to the horror like a moth to a flame. "It's not real," he whispered, as if trying to convince himself. "It can't be real." But then, the figure's head turned towards us, and though she had no eyes, I could feel her gaze, cold and relentless, boring into me. The chanting voice echoed around us, filled with a chilling finality. Instinct kicked in, and I yanked Jake back. The terror drove us to flee. We ran through the park, shadows closing in, paths twisting and looping endlessly. Behind us, the sound of splashing footsteps grew louder. Just as it felt like we would never escape, Jake stumbled into a door hidden in the shadows. We tumbled inside and slammed it shut, gasping, sweating, trembling. The air inside was thick with dust and the faint hum of machinery. It took us a while to calm down. Then we noticed it. The forgotten control room. It was the night water's heart. Rows of monitors flicked to life, displaying different areas of the park. We stared in shock as we saw what we had been running from. Animatronics, life-sized and eerily lifelike. Designed to scare and thrill, they were controlled by old sensors and timers, meant to create an immersive and terrifying experience. The park had been way ahead of its time. It was all just machines. Quiet high tech. We spent hours in that room, understanding how everything worked. The eerie whispers, the flickering lights, even the figure in the pool. It had all been part of a sophisticated system meant to haunt visitors. The associating story only notched it up. In the following weeks, we decided to reopen the park, embracing its eerie past. The Night Waters was transformed into a new kind of attraction, a place where thrill seekers could face their fears in a controlled environment. It quickly became a sensation, its dark history and unsettling atmosphere drawing crowds eager for a taste of the macabre. But even as the park buzzed with new life, the memories of that night lingered. Every time I walked those grounds after dark, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching, still waiting in the shadows. The machines had been explained, but the lingering sense of dread remained. A reminder that some mysteries, no matter how much light we shed on them, would always hold a touch of darkness. When I first took Morgan to the mall that day, the air was thick with the scent of cinnamon and pine. The bustling crowd, the twinkling lights, and the cheery Christmas music were enough to bring out the child in anyone. Morgan's eyes sparkled with excitement as he tugged at my hand, pointing eagerly at every display we passed.
"Granny, look!"
he exclaimed delightedly.
"It's Santa!"
There he was, right by the towering Christmas tree, Santa Claus himself. Or at least some man dressed as Santa. A group of giggling children surrounded him, each waiting their turn to sit on his lap and tell him their Christmas wishes. Morgan was no different. As we approached, I couldn't help but notice something unsettling about the man. His Santa suit was immaculate, but his eyes didn't have that jolly twinkle I remembered from when I was a child. Instead, they seemed cold, detached. But I pushed that thought aside, chalking it up to my overactive imagination. After all, I was an old woman, and sometimes I saw things that others couldn't.
Go on, dear.
I encouraged Morgan, even though my stomach twisted in knots.
Go say hi.
Morgan clapped and excitedly waddled his way to the podium. Santa guffawed as he placed him on his lap. But the next seconds, Morgan's face changed. His smile faltered, eyes widened, and I swear I saw the color drain from his cheeks.
Morgan?
I gasped softly, but he didn't respond. His tiny hands were clenched into fists as the man grinned down at him, too wide, too forced. Then, Morgan flinched. It was subtle, but I saw it. A small, almost imperceptible jerk, as if something had startled him. The picture was taken in a flash, and then the man leaned in close to Morgan's ear. I couldn't hear what he whispered, but I saw the way my grandson's body cowered. The man's smile never wavered as he set Morgan down on the ground and picked another kiddo.
Thank you, Santa.
I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Morgan curled his cold palms around my fingers and dragged us out. He didn't say a word all the way home. The sparkle in his eyes had died. His little body was rigid with fear. It wasn't until we got back that I noticed how pale he'd become, the way his skin seemed almost translucent. That night, he wouldn't go to bed. He insisted on sleeping in mine, and no matter how much his parents or I coaxed or comforted him, he wouldn't stop shaking. Morgan was terrified of something, or someone. When his mother found him the next morning, curled up on my bed, feverish and mumbling in his sleep, our hearts nearly stopped. He kept muttering,
"Don't touch me. Don't touch me."
Over and over again, his voice so weak and broken that it made my chest tighten with dread. Morgan's fever broke after 2 days, but the shivering remained. When we tried to talk to him about Christmas, he screamed so loud the neighbors came. His eyes were wild with terror. "Mom, is there something you want to tell us?" my son asked after he had tucked Morgan into bed.
Don't worry. I'll take care of it.
I promised. There was only one explanation. Whatever that man had done, it was enough to scar my grandson deeply. I couldn't just sit back and do nothing, not when I knew something was so horribly wrong. So, on the night before Christmas, I went back to the mall. I wanted to confront the man, to see for myself what kind of monster had terrified my sweet boy. The mall was quieter than before. The festive chaos was replaced with a more subdued atmosphere. But there he was, still sitting in that same chair, still grinning at every child he placed on his lap. I observed him from a distance. Everything was usual at first. He'd pick kids, laugh, and promise them presents. But then I saw it. He had scooped a little girl around Morgan's age into his arms. She was telling him something when his palm wrapped around her tiny thighs and pinched her. Then, he leaned in to whisper something in her ear. The girl's face went ashen, her tiny mouth quivering as she held back tears. That monster. I stormed over, grabbed a large candy cane decoration from the corner, and without a second thought, brought it down hard on that man's head. He recoiled, a look of shock on his face as I hit him again and again until the security intervened.
You freak!
I screamed for everyone to hear. The security stormed in and took him away. The parents reported everything to the authorities. Later, I found out he'd been arrested and charged with multiple counts of child endangerment. But even as they led him away in handcuffs, he turned and smiled at us. No, not at me, but through me, as if he could see something I couldn't. And that's when I realized the man in the Santa suit wasn't just some pervert or creep. He was something far worse, something evil that thrived on the vulnerability of children, on their innocence and trust. And even though he was gone, I couldn't shake the knowledge that somewhere around the world, another Morgan might be subjected to the same trauma. Because evil like that doesn't just go away. It lingers, waiting for the next chance to strike, to spread in like darkness. And now, every time I close my eyes, I see that smile, that terrible monstrous grin, and I know deep down that this Christmas won't be the last we hear of devils like them. I don't believe in ghost stories or urban legends, but walking down those deserted streets of Belgrade that night, something felt off. The Serbian dancing lady. What a laughable joke, right? That creepy story that went viral on TikTok. People saying they had seen her all alone, dancing in the streets, turning around streetlights with a knife. A legend tells that she could run after any person who came too close. But come on, just a joke, I said to myself. I am Luca, a journalist. What I enjoy the most is debunking hoaxes like this. Naturally, I had decided to follow up on this story after it began to go viral on cyberspace. It was almost midnight and I packed my bags with a camera in hand, hoping to catch whatever hoax this was in frame. But the streets of Belgrade lay deathly quiet beneath me, a stillness that reached down into your skin. Just two strays scurried past as I made my way down to the alley where she had last been spotted. The air was heavy, cold seeping into my bones as I tried to shake off the nerves building inside. All you could hear was my footsteps, at least each step echoing down cobblestones. I arrived at the alley and stopped there, pulling out my camera. Let's see if this ghost lady's real, I told myself, more to try to keep myself from freaking out than anything else. I began filming street scenes, speaking into the camera. Nothing so far, probably just... Then I heard it. Music, very soft, as if from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. The wind was carrying it on its breath. My chest tightened as I slowly turned my head. It was then that I saw her. He stood at the end of the street, where it seemed a dangling street lamp cast just enough light to illuminate his stand. The girl danced, that's the only word for it. No, she swayed in a long, sweeping gown. Her movements were slow and eerily mesmerizing, as though lost in another world. My breath caught in my throat. No, this cannot be real. It wasn't possible, but it was. She spun, arms weaving around her body beatifically, but something was wrong in the movement. Too staccato, too conscious. My hands were shaking as I raised the camera and zoomed in on her. The lens fought to find its focus, but it was enough. She was a woman, and she was dancing. Then she stopped, quite suddenly. She looked up at me as she had just realized I was staring at her. My heart was pounding, and everything in my body screamed to run away, but my feet were glued onto the floor. She sat there in the shadows and stared at me. She was hiding her face behind hers, but I could feel eyes on me. The air was thick and suffocating as I stood there, too scared to move. Then she started walking towards me. Dancing was over, fluid moment gone. Now it was a slow, deliberate walk, as if she were advancing directly for me. I tried to take one step back, but my legs would not go. Was this real? Was this some sort of demented trick? I looked down at her hand and saw there, it was glinting in the dim light, a knife. Then, something inside me snapped. My head was screaming at me to move. I turned around and fled, pounding my feet on pavement and my heart in my ears. It was as if the sound of my heart beating in time created an urgency that drowned her. However, underneath it, I heard her footsteps, slumbering, slow, deliberate, steady, as if she knew exactly where I was going. I chanced to glance over my shoulder. She was still there, darkly silhouetted, moving with an efficiency to be toward me, the knife catching every step of light. I ran faster, turning down haphazard streets, my gasping breath coming raggedly as I tried to shake her. Every time I seemed to have lost her, I could hear her still, the soft tapping of her shoes against cobblestones. I ran down the alley, getting behind a dumpster to crouch down for breath. My hands were shaking as I held my camera. I tried to stand still. I need proof. This is not just some stupid joke. I hit record again, peeking over the dumpster. Her face was hidden once more behind the overhanging wall, but I felt sure she saw me. I waited, holding my breath to ensure she would not come forward any farther. For a few agonizing moments, we just stayed locked in this pose, as if me crouching there in the shadows and she stared straight at me. And then, slowly, she turned and walked away, vanishing into the darkness again. I waited, my heart pounding wildly, could not piece together what had occurred. Was it done? I didn't know. It took all that was left of me to stand up, my legs shaking as I stumbled from the alley. The streets were empty again, and the morbid music was gone. Had I dreamed it? No, I couldn't do that. I had it on film. Back in my apartment, I replayed the tape. There she was, dancing, then walking straight for me. But something made my stomach drop. In the video, as she danced under the streetlight, she wasn't looking at me. She was looking behind me? A chill slid down my spine, and before I could do anything about it, my phone buzzed. On my screen was a text from an unknown caller. "You should have left her alone." A chill went through my neck. I was no longer alone. Not anymore. Meeting Kelly felt like something out of a dream. A weird, dark dream, but a dream nonetheless. I've never been the type of guy who gets the girl. Hell, I've never even been the type of guy who talks to the girl. My comfort zone has always been behind a computer screen where I could control the conversation, where my awkwardness didn't show, and where I wasn't constantly reminded of how much of a loser I am. I wasn't looking for anything special when I stumbled into the dark web chat room. It was more out of boredom than anything else. But then I met Kelly. She was different from anyone I'd ever talked to. Confident, funny, and actually interested in what I had to say. She didn't just tolerate my nerdy ramblings, she engaged with them, made me feel like I mattered. For someone like me, who's always been a bit of a loner, that meant the world. Kelly wasn't perfect. She had her issues, just like I did. She told me about her struggle with hair loss, a condition that made her feel invisible and unattractive. She said no guy ever looked at her the way she wanted to be looked at. That hit me hard because I know what it felt like to be overlooked, to feel like you don't matter. We bonded over the shared feeling of not fitting in, and before long I found myself falling for her. After weeks of late-night chats, we decided it was time to meet in person. We picked an abandoned children's park out in the middle of nowhere. It seemed perfect, a quiet, out-of-the-way spot where we could finally see each other without any pressure. I was nervous as hell, but I couldn't wait to see her. The park was even creepier than I'd imagined. The sun had just set, leaving everything in that dim, unsettling twilight where nothing feels quite real. I got there early, sat on a bench near an old, rusted swing set, and waited. The place was dead quiet, and with each passing minute, my nerves started to get the best of me. Then, I noticed him. A creepy old man sitting on a bench a little ways off. He was just staring at me. Not a casual glance, but a full-on, unsettling stare. I tried to ignore him, but it wasn't easy. I pulled out my phone and texted Kelly, asking how long she'd be. She replied that she was walking because she couldn't catch a cab. Great, I thought. Just what I needed, to be stuck here alone with this weirdo watching me. I shifted on the bench, trying to act like I wasn't bothered, but I couldn't help it. The old man's stare was drilling into me, and every instinct I had was screaming that something was wrong. Then he stood up and started walking toward me. My heart skipped a beat. I'm not usually paranoid, but this guy was seriously creeping me out. I got up and started walking away, texting Kelly the whole time, telling her about the old man and that I was moving to another spot. She told me to wait a few minutes, that she'd be there soon, but I couldn't wait. I just needed to get away. I spotted a bus stop at the edge of the park, lit by a flickering streetlight. It wasn't much, but it was something. I made my way there, trying to calm myself down. As I reached the bus stop, I looked back and there he was, standing across the street, grinning at me. That grin sent a shiver down my spine. It was like he knew something I didn't, like he was enjoying my fear. I needed to hear Kelly's voice, to know that she was real and that this wasn't some messed up joke. But I didn't have her number. We'd been so caught up in our chat room world that we never thought to exchange phone numbers. I cursed myself for that, then texted her, saying the internet was spotty and asking for her number. She didn't reply right away, and those few seconds felt like an eternity. Finally, her number popped up in the chat. I didn't waste a second. I called it immediately. The phone rang once, then twice, and then I heard it. The ringtone, echoing through the empty street. My heart sank. I looked around, but the street was deserted. No sign of Kelly, no sign of anyone. Panic set in. I looked across the street again, but the old man was gone. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. Everything about this felt wrong. My hands were shaking as I dialed her number again. The ringtone started up, louder this time, closer, right behind me. I turned around slowly, every muscle in my body tense. The old man was crouched on the bus stop bench, grinning at me like he'd just won some sick game.
"Hello, Ryan,"
he said, his voice dripping with malice.
"I hope my hair is fine for you. I didn't want to wear a wig on our first date."
I stared at him, my mind racing to make sense of what was happening. Kelly's words, her stories about her hair loss, her vulnerability, it all came crashing down on me in a sickening realization. This wasn't Kelly. It had been him all along. He lunged at me, and I reacted without thinking. My fist connected with his face, and he stumbled back, blood streaming from his nose. I didn't wait to see what he'd do next. I turned and ran, his voice echoing after me.
"Stop, Ryan! Stop! I thought you were different. I thought you loved me."
I didn't stop running until I was back at my apartment, the door locked behind me, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I felt sick, violated, like I'd been played from the start. I wiped my phone and computer clean that night, erasing every trace of that chat room, of Kelly, if that was even her real name, of everything. I was done with the dark web, done with trusting people online. I learned my lesson the hard way. The dark web is a dangerous place, and sometimes the people you meet there aren't people at all. I had heard about the new Thai massage parlor from my friends. They couldn't stop talking about it, how the girls there were almost too perfect. No expressions, no small talk, just pure focus on the job. I found it a bit strange, but curiosity got the better of me. After a particularly brutal gym session that left me sore from head to toe, I decided to check it out. The place was tucked away on a quiet street in our quaint town, almost as if it was trying to hide in plain sight. From the outside, it looked like any other upscale spa, with soft lights and lush greenery framing the entrance. Inside, the interior was stunning. Dark wood panels, intricate Thai carvings, and the warm, earthy tones of Thai decor. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and sandalwood, a blend that both relaxed and heightened my senses. A receptionist, dressed in traditional Thai attire, greeted me with a polite nod and handed me a menu of services. Before I could say much, she led me to a private room. The room was dimly lit, with a low table in the center and soft cushions around it. I settled onto the table, feeling the tension in my muscles ease just from being in the room. A few minutes later, the door slid open, and a petite woman entered. She was beautiful, with delicate features and long, dark hair that flowed like silk down her back. But what struck me was how emotionless she seemed, like a porcelain doll come to life. "Hi, I'm Jack. What's your name?" She didn't respond at first, just moved gracefully to the table, her movements almost mechanical.
Lada.
Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. She instructed me to relax, not to speak, and most importantly, not to touch her during the massage. The last part made me uncomfortable, but I agreed. The massage started, and I quickly understood why this place was so popular. Her hands moved with precision, kneading out the knots in my muscles with a skill that bordered on surreal. The stress began to melt away, and I let myself sink into the experience. But then, something strange happened. As she moved around the table, her thigh brushed against my hand. A jolt shot through my body, and suddenly I wasn't in the room anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere dark and terrifying. I saw a village, a remote place in the middle of a dense jungle. It was nighttime. The air was thick with smoke. Houses were burning, and there were screams, the kind that chilled your soul. In the midst of the chaos, I saw a young girl being dragged away by men in military uniforms. Her face was contorted in fear, and as she was pulled into the darkness, our eyes locked. Then, just as quickly as the vision had come, it was gone. I was back in the room, but something was wrong. Lada had stopped moving, frozen in place like a statue. Her hand was still on my shoulder, but there was no warmth, no life in her touch. "Lada, are you okay?" No response. She just stood there, unmoving. Panic started to set in. I called her name again, louder this time. Nothing. I reached out, my hand trembling, and touched her arm. Another jolt, and she snapped back to life, gasping if she had been underwater and had just surfaced for air. Tears welled up in her eyes, and when she looked at me, she wasn't the lifeless doll anymore. She was terrified.
They kidnap these men, shadows. They make us drink. And we, statues.
Her words came out in a rush, her voice filled with desperation. My mind raced, trying to process what she was saying. That's when I noticed them. 3 figures leaning against the glass door, watching us from outside. Suddenly, the door slid open, and one of the men stepped inside. He was tall, his face obscured by the dim light, but there was something wrong about him, something unnatural. His skin was pitch black, like a living shadow. The other 2 men followed, and the door shut behind them. The man spoke something in Thai. She suddenly resumed the massage, her hands shaking slightly. I knew I had to act, but my body felt frozen with fear. The shadowy figure loomed closer, and I knew this wasn't going to end well. Finally, as the figure reached out for me, something snapped inside. I grabbed the massage oil from the table and hurled it at his face. It didn't seem to hurt him, but it startled him enough to give me an opening. I leapt off the table and charged at the door, slamming into the 2 shadows blocking it. We tumbled to the floor and I fought like a madman, adrenaline giving me strength I didn't know I had. Somehow, I managed to break free and burst out of the room. I didn't stop running until I was outside, gasping for air, my heart hammering in my chest. When I finally looked back, the massage parlor was dark, the 3 shadows watching from above. The next day, the place was closed down. No signs, no explanations, just gone. I told my friend what had happened, hoping for some kind of rational explanation, and that is when he told me of the Shadow Men. They're like a myth. Some say they're not human, but creatures who secretly control everything. Lizard people. The legends say they've been around for centuries, hiding in plain sight, running the global order. That parlor must be a part of a larger chain of human trafficking. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but something about it made sense. I can't help but wonder if they would still come for me. I never imagined that moving to Pinebrook would become a test of my resilience. My name is Anita, a 28-year-old accountant who recently immigrated from India. I was eager to start my new job at a small accounting firm nestled in this quaint town. On my first day, I stepped into the office, a stuffy room filled with aged white men who paused their conversations as I entered. Their eyes followed me, a mix of curiosity and disdain. One man smirked.
You're a bit different from what we're used to around here.
I forced a smile, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. Work was isolating. My colleagues offered little assistance, and lunchtime was a solitary affair. I often ate at my desk, poring over spreadsheets while overhearing whispered conversations centered around my skin color. After work, I drove along the winding highway back to my rented house on Maple Street. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I noticed a black sedan pull onto the road behind me. Thinking nothing of it, I continued driving, but had a feeling that it was following me. Then, the next night, and the one after that, the same sedan appeared, maintaining a steady distance all the time. I took a different exit, but it followed. I routed back to my original path, and it followed yet again. The unease grew. Then, 3 nights later, the sedan inched closer, its headlights glaring into my rearview mirror. My palms grew sweaty as I gripped the steering wheel. I had heard incidents of racial attacks in these parts.
Stay calm. Just get home.
The sedan suddenly flashed its high beams, blinding me. I swerved slightly in stopping to the side. But by then, just as abruptly, it sped off into the darkness. Now at home, things weren't much better. My neighbors seemed to harbor an unexplained animosity. Their trash bags appeared outside my front door, torn open with garbage strewn across the porch. When I walked to the same site that night, I decided to confront them and walked up to ring their doorbell. An old man on a wheelchair opened the door and stared at me with disdain.
Excuse me. I believe all that trash belongs to you.
He looked at the trash outside my house and just shrugged his shoulders.
My wife throws the trash, so only she'll be able to tell you when she returns from the church. Maybe you should mind your own business.
I'd appreciate if my property was respected from now on. Or else, I'll have to call the police.
He sneered.
Why don't you do that right now, honey, and see how far that gets you?
He casually slapped my behind and then closed the door on my face. I was left horrified. After a few days, the black sedan followed me again, and then again the next night. Each time, it followed a bit closer, almost looking like it would hit me. Then, one night, after having a particularly hard day at work, I arrived at my home to find the black sedan outside, and my mailbox had been knocked over. I was paralyzed. It stood for just some time before screeching its tires and rushing away. I found a note in my fallen mailbox, which said, "Leave town now." That next day at work, I overheard a conversation.
She doesn't belong here. Taking jobs from real Americans. Cole was fired because she does his job for half the pay.
My presence was met with cold stares and silence. The isolation was suffocating. That night, I received a voicemail from an unknown number. A raspy whisper filled the line, which announced the creative ways in which people of color had disappeared in that area, and I might as well. Sleep eluded me. Every creak of the house amplified my paranoia. Around midnight, a tapping sound echoed from the living room window. I crept downstairs, clutching a kitchen knife. Peering through the curtain, it was raining outside. And then, I don't know if it was just a hallucination, but I saw someone with long hair trying to look inside. Just as I turned the lights on, he vanished.
This can't go on.
The next morning, I discovered my car tire slashed. That was the breaking point. I went to the police station, half expecting dismissal due to my color. Officer Miller listened without paying much attention, and it felt like he had brushed my concern.
We'll look into it.
Just 2 days later, as I drove home, the black sedan appeared once more. My heart hammered as it closed the distance. Suddenly, police lights flashed behind us. The sedan accelerated, attempting to flee, and the police car chased it. It was soon cornered by patrol cars. I pulled over, watching as cops led by Officer Miller approached the vehicle. A young man with long hair was pulled out, protesting vehemently and flipping like a fish out of water. Officer Miller approached me.
We got him.
Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The next day, someone knocked on my door. It was Mrs. Jenkins, my elderly next-door neighbor. Her long silver hair fell till her shoulders, and her dark eyes studied me intently.
You've caused quite a stir in our community. I'm sorry? My son lost his job at that accounting firm. Worked there for years. Then you showed up. Now he's out on the street. I'm sorry about your son, but I had nothing to do with that.
Her lips curled into a sneer.
You people come here, taking what's ours. I won't stand for it.
A chill ran down my spine.
Are you saying you're behind the harassment?
She leaned in.
I did what was necessary to protect my family. You could have quit and went away. But now, because of you, my son is in jail. This is illegal. You can't threaten me.
She scoffed.
Who's going to believe you over a respected member of this community?
Just then, Officer Miller appeared at the doorway.
Actually, we will.
Mrs. Jenkins' face paled.
Your son told us what you've been up to, ma'am. You're under arrest for harassment and conspiracy.
As they led her away, I stood there, shaking. The pieces fell into place. The stalking, the threats, all orchestrated by someone who appeared harmless. In the days that followed, the town was abuzz with gossip. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with resentment. At work, the atmosphere shifted slightly, but within some months, I applied for another job and left the town. Me and Emily were like inseparable. She came to my house that evening, just like a million times before. We talked, laughed, and shared secrets. When she left, the sun was already low down, turning the crisp autumn air chilly on our skin. I stood there at the door, waving to see her disappear at the end of the street. The last light of the day faded slowly as it disappeared behind her. I didn't know that the next time I'd ever see her would be the last time, as the Emily I knew. It had been a few days into the school year when all hell let loose in our little town of Crestwood. Emily didn't make it home. Everyone joined the search. I was there too, flashlight in hand, yelling her name into the thick darkness of the woods. Hours turned into days, and there was no sign of her. Throughout it all, I was stuck on what if she's hurt? What if she's cold and scared? But nothing could have prepared me for what they eventually found. 2 days went by, and a ranger discovered Emily stuck in a cave deep within the forest. I could hear it and ran as fast as my legs could carry. What I see is etched into my memory now forever. She sat there, a weird big smile on her face and completely white eyes. Something was seriously wrong. It wasn't Emily anymore. It was just as if someone or something else had replaced her. The ranger called the police right away, but all I could do was stand there with my heart pounding in my chest. Her parents soon arrived, equally aghast. Emily sat there, still grinning, still silent, with white eyes staring right through us. She was taken to the hospital, but something dark had already taken hold of her. I visited her the next day, hoping for some explanation, some indication of the girl I grew up with, and the things went even darker in turn. She had her fit in the hospital. I was in the corridor when it happened. I heard screaming, thrashing about, and then, quite suddenly, a nurse bursts out of the room with blood running down her arm. Emily had bitten the nurse. The woman had to have her sedate Emily. She was chained to the bed. Her father, John, was beside himself. He refused to believe all the stories of dark rituals or possession going the rounds in town, but then she heard a whisper from her mother, Linda, saying that something evil had taken her daughter. John wouldn't take that. He resumed his investigation, tracing down Emily's moves, and that's where they found the CCTV footage. I remember watching that with them. 3 people, dressed in animal masks and black robes, carrying Emily into the woods. It made my stomach twist to take it. Linda was of the opinion they must have used Emily in some dark occult ritual, but John refused to believe in hocus pocus, as he called it. Emily was allowed to go home after 7 days in the hospital. John ensured his friend Dr. Roberts, a psychiatrist of considerable repute, would visit to conduct a session with her. I saw it all happen. Always skeptical of therapy, Emily now seemed nonchalant when Dr. Roberts started the hypnosis procedure and asked her to talk about the events of the night she had been kidnapped. At the beginning, she was sounding so flat, as if she were going through the motions of telling how she was walking home when then grabbed by the masked figures. And then something changed. Her voice deepened, took on this eerie, malignant tone.
I am not the girl you think I am.
She said, now smiling even wider.
I must be back to my new home in that cave.
My blood ran cold. Before anyone could react, Emily broke out of the trance, her eyes turning the horrible, vacant white again. She lunged at Dr. Roberts, her hand around his throat. John and I pulled her off with all of our strength, but it was like fighting something inhuman. When we finally subdued her, she was unconscious. She was taken back to the hospital, but I knew things were far from over. That night, she escaped. Somehow, even with all the chains and all the sedatives, she managed to get out of the hospital and disappear into the night. The police were called, and once again, we were all out searching for her, this time towards the cave where she had been discovered. But when we arrived there, she was nowhere to be found, and in her place, we found a note written in blood.
Don't look for me. I'm with my people now.
And from that day forward, Crestwood Town never was the same again. Emily's parents were left shattered, trying to grapple with horror mystery of what happened to their daughter. And I couldn't stop thinking about the cave, about the last time I saw her, about what really became of my best friend, Emily. I've been a documentary filmmaker for years, always chasing that one story that would break out. When I heard the rumors about the abandoned water park on the outskirts of my friend's hometown, I knew I had to go. Man, this place looks cursed, Eric said as we stood at the rusted gates of the place at 12 in the night. I could see the hesitation in his eyes, but I had already made my mind up. You really believe those old legends? Come on, it's just an old water park. A few kids probably got hurt and made up a few stories. Carl, you don't get it. This place was built on a graveyard. People died here. Lots of them. Drownings, accidents, things that didn't make sense. And it all happened within a year. They had to shut it down. Some of those bodies were never even found. I ignored his warning. If there was nothing, there was nothing. But if there was something, I could get it on film. As we stepped inside, the air felt thick and carried a strange smell. The park was a desolate wasteland forgotten by time. The water slides were covered in rust, their vibrant colors faded to dull, lifeless tones. Weeds had taken over the pathways, and the pools were filled with murky water, more like swamps than places of joy. I pulled out my camera and started filming. This is perfect. People love this kind of creepy shit. But as we walked deeper into the park, we witnessed strange things. It began with the metallic clang of a chain, like someone was pulling it along the concrete. We both stopped. Did you hear that? Yeah, probably just the wind. But we both knew that was a lie. The air was still, not a breath of wind to be felt. We continued walking, and that's when I heard it, water flowing, like a river rushing past us. But there was no water. The pools were empty, save for the filth that had generated over the years. And just as we were getting spooked, we heard it. Wailing, a woman's wailing in the dead silence of the night. It started as a low moan, barely audible, but it grew louder, more agonized, until it felt like it was coming from all around us. I whipped my camera around, trying to capture it, but there was nothing, just the empty park. We need to keep moving. Eric didn't respond. He was staring straight ahead, his face drained of color. I followed his gaze and felt my stomach drop. There, in the distance, was a figure, a woman. Or at least what looked like a woman. She was barely visible, a translucent silhouette, but her eyes were dark. We turned and ran instantly, not caring where we were going, just needing to get away. The sound of our footsteps echoed through the park, but they weren't alone. There were other footsteps, heavier, faster, chasing us. My heart pounded in my chest. I felt the terror clawing at my mind, making me want to scream. I turned left, heading towards the wave pool. It was massive, once the pride of the park, now just a pit of dirt and debris. I skidded to a stop at the edge, panting. There was no way out. That's when I saw her again, the apparition. She was closer this time, her face twisted in a grotesque smile. I felt something cold wrap around my ankle, and before I could react, I was pulled forward. I stumbled, falling into the pool, expecting to hit solid ground, but I kept sinking. The dirt and leaves above had been an illusion. Beneath them was water, cold, dark water that dragged me down. I thrashed, trying to find the bottom, but there was nothing, just an endless abyss pulling me under. My lungs burned, the weight of the water pressing in on me from all sides. I tried to scream, but my mouth filled with water. Just as I thought I was done for, someone grabbed my hand. He was strong, pulling me with a force I couldn't fight. I broke through the surface, gasping for air, and was dragged to the edge of the pool. I collapsed on the ground, coughing up water, my entire body shaking. I finally looked back to see Eric standing there. Eric, you saved me. But then he turned his neck and saw something in the distance that suddenly scared him. He ran away. I scrambled to my feet and sprinted as well, but Eric had disappeared, so I went for the exit. I could see our van in the distance, and Eric was already inside, huddled in the driver's seat. Eric, move! Eric drove away, his hands trembling on the wheel. What the hell was that?
I didn't just see all that. Jesus, why are you wet?
Thanks for pulling me out of the pool. What pool? The pool where I was drowning. You pulled me out.
I didn't pull you out of anything. I ran straight to the van when I saw that ghost.
What?
Yeah.
Then who pulled me out? I felt the blood drain from my face. Who or what saved me? We never found an answer. February used to be the month I dreaded the most. The cold, the loneliness, and the constant reminders of love everywhere. It felt like the world was conspiring to rub salt in my wounds, grinning ruthlessly. But that February was different. I'd spent most of my life being the butt of every joke, the target of every taunt. Merry round Jemmy, the fat bald nobody took seriously. But it never really got to me because I had Stacy. She was my best friend, and the girl I secretly loved. Kind, sensitive, and beautiful. Stacy was a fairy. She had a way of making everyone feel special, and unlike everyone else, she saw the human in me. So, on that Valentine's Day, I finally mustered the courage to tell her how I felt.
You've been nothing but kind to me, Stacy.
I whispered.
I love you so much that it hurts to be just a friend anymore.
For a moment, she just stared at me, her eyes widening in surprise as I waited with bated breath for her shy yes. Then her face contorted in disgust.
Jemmy, I'm sorry, but I don't see you like that. You're great, but we can't be...
Her words hit me like a punch in the gut, and she kept plunging the knife even deeper.
Honestly, Jemmy, I never thought you'd think we could be more. I mean, look at you and look at me. It just wouldn't work.
It was a deep sting, more than a bully's taunt ever was. I had mistaken things. Stacy was sympathetic. That was the moment I decided enough was enough. The next day, I signed up at a gym. My trainer, Mark Porter, was a caricature of masculinity, broad chest, bulging arms, with the strangely skinny legs. He looked like a distorted version of Johnny Bravo. We kicked off right from the moment we met. Mark was quite verbal with his appreciation and encouragement, but it was never his words that raised the alarm. His touch lingered a little longer during adjustment. The unnerving intensity would always leave me panting and shivering. The way he smiled, with a hint of something I couldn't quite read. Everything about him made my skin crawl. I threw myself into the workouts, but the weight was stubborn. Frustration ate away, with Stacy's words playing on a loop, driving my desperation. One evening, as I wiped the sweat from my face, I overheard Mark's hushed conversation with a gym member. They were talking about a nectar, some sort of elixir for bulking. After my workout, I determinedly approached Mark. He winked with a knowing smile. "I can get it for you," he said. 3 drops, twice a week, and let the magic unfold. Keep working out, though. The first dose felt like a revelation. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter, and the scale confirmed a slight drop. I went to the gym with a spring in my step, but as I worked out, I noticed something odd. Strange shadows twisted and warped at the edge of my vision. My head whirled. Mark was closer. His hands were reaching out to me. The air grew colder, and I heard a low, persistent buzz. Whispers began, voices murmuring my name seductively. I felt an unsettling pull towards Mark, drawn in by an inexplicable urge. Just as I was fisting his hair, the janitor arrived, breaking the eerie spell. We parted. I picked up my things and was about to dash out when Mark leaned closer. "Take a full tablespoon tonight," he mumbled. "We'll continue where we left off. If you get sick, I've got the cure." Despite my instincts screaming otherwise, I nodded. I went home and, against my better judgment, took a full tablespoon of the elixir. The next morning, I was met with my worst nightmare. My hair came out in clumps, my eyebrows were gone, and red rashes covered my skin. My stomach was in excruciating pain that left me unable to eat or sleep for 2 days, until I finally forced myself to see the doctor. The truth shook my whole existence. The elixir wasn't a weight loss supplement. It was date rape drugs, causing hallucinations that tricked my mind into thinking I was losing weight. Horror consumed me. Mark was a scammer. I reported Mark to the gym, and he was fired. But he evaded legal consequences. I was too scared to press charges, knowing I'd be implicated for buying illegal substances. The experience left me scarred, but it also opened my eyes. Real change couldn't come from shortcuts. It had to come from within, slowly and steadily. I picked myself up, one step at a time. I started working out again, but this time for the right reasons. I needed to love myself before I could expect anyone else to. Stacy's rejection had been a harsh wake-up call. I realized that my worth wasn't defined by others' opinions, but by how I saw myself. As the months passed, I noticed real progress. Mark tried reaching out, but I shut all the doors. The weight came off gradually, but more importantly, I began to see myself differently. I no longer sought validation from others. Stacy's words still echoed in my mind, but they no longer held power over me. I had learned to forgive and let go of the past. Nowadays, I feel a sense of peace I hadn't known before. My reflection smiles back at me, a reminder of how far I've come. February will always be a reminder of my darkest moment, but also of my greatest triumph. I was just 11 when I first arrived at the Johnsons' house. I thought I'd finally found a real family. The house was perfect, like something out of a magazine. White picket fence, flowers lining the walkway, and a porch swing. Mrs. Johnson was always smiling, and Mr. Johnson was the kind of man who patted your head when you did well in school. I had heard that they had helped 4 kids before me, including Jules, with whom I had briefly shared a home with earlier. I was finally safe. We'd have family dinners every night with Mr. Johnson carving the roast while Mrs. Johnson asked me about school. They even gave me my own room. It was more than I'd ever had before. But then, the strange woman started coming. It was always the same. The doorbell would ring and Mrs. Johnson's smile would tighten just a little. They never let me see her, not at first. They'd shut the door behind them and all I'd hear was their muffled voices. The first time I saw her was by accident. I'd forgotten my math book downstairs and had snuck out of bed to get it. I peeked around the corner just in time to see her being led to a small broom cupboard under the stairs. She was Chinese, maybe in her late 30s, with long black hair, but weirdly, the Johnsons locked the cupboard from outside.
Why is that woman locked up in the room?
Mrs. Johnson's smile was back in place by the time she answered.
She's just a friend who needs some cleaning supplies. Don't worry, honey. Go back to your room.
I didn't believe her. Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. The visits became more frequent. Every few days the woman would show up, and each time the Johnsons would lock her away in the cupboard for a few hours. It wasn't just that, though. I started noticing other things, little things that didn't add up. Mr. Johnson would disappear late at night, only to return with dirt on his shoes and clothes. Mrs. Johnson would get phone calls, and after hanging up, she'd look worried. One night, I overheard them arguing in the kitchen. "She's getting suspicious. We can't keep this up much longer."
She's just a child. She doesn't understand. It's too late to back out now. We need to see it through.
I didn't know what they were talking about, but I knew it wasn't good. Then, one night, I found the pictures. I went to Mr. Johnson's home office to get a stapler for my school project when I knocked over a stack of papers on his desk. As I picked them up, a few photos slid out from underneath. They were of children, boys and girls around my age or younger. Some of them were tied up. My hands shook as I shoved the photos back into the pile, but not before I saw the last one. It was of a Chinese woman sitting in the same broom cupboard that they always locked her in, only this time, she wasn't alone. There was a little girl with her, and I recognized her instantly. Jules. I knew then that something was terribly off. The next day, Mrs. Johnson told me to go clean the broom cupboard. I didn't think anything of it until I stepped inside and the door slammed shut behind me. I heard the lock click and I was plunged into darkness.
Let me out! Please!
But no one came. I don't know how long I was in there, but it must have been 2 to 3 days. I screamed until my throat was raw, but they didn't care. They would just give me food and water once in a day and kept a bucket beside me for me to relieve. And then, one night, the door opened. To my horror, it was the same mysterious Chinese woman. She didn't say a word, pulled out a marker, and wrote something in Chinese on my arms and neck before leaving. I had to think fast. There was nothing in the cupboard except for brooms, a mop, and a small toolbox. The toolbox. It took few hours to pry the nails out of the wooden panels, but it loosened the lock on the door, which finally gave way. I crawled out, covered in sweat and dirt, and then ran for the neighbor's house. When they opened their door, I burst into tears and told them everything. The police came soon after, and over the next month, a massive crackdown happened as the arrest of the Johnsons revealed a big human trafficking ring. They found the pictures, imprisoned the Chinese woman and her friends, and this scandal suddenly shook our small town. The Johnsons were arrested, but I still see their faces in my nightmares. I considered them close to my parents, not realizing that I was being groomed by them to be sold off. It's often the people with the warmest of smiles who have the darkest of hearts. When Jake and I were sent to live with Mrs. Hawthorne, we were told it was a fresh start, a chance to be part of a family again, to have a home in the countryside where the air was clean and the nights were quiet. I wanted to believe that, but the moment we arrived, something felt wrong. Mrs. Hawthorne's house was old, leaning under the weight of decades, surrounded by thick woods. The air inside was stale and marred with creaking floorboards. Mrs. Hawthorne greeted us with a strange smile. She was supposed to be old, with silver hair pinned into a tight bun and wrinkly arms, but her face looked young and radiant, as if she were 30. There were 3 other children there, which was odd since we were not told about them. They were quiet, their eyes downcast, moving like they were half asleep.
Jake, do you think they're okay?
They're just shy, Mia. We'll be fine. But as the days passed, I wasn't so sure. The house itself seemed alive, with doors that creaked open on their own and shadows that slithered across the walls. At night, I'd hear strange noises coming from the attic, scratching, like something was trying to claw its way out. The other children never talked about it, never even seemed to notice. But when I pressed one of the boys, Oliver, about it, he just told me to not talk about it, or the caregiver would know.
I'm sure she can't hear us.
That is when Oliver's face paled and he turned away, saying that the caregiver was not Mrs. Hawthorne. It was the first time I heard about the caretaker, but it wouldn't be the last. The other kids whispered about it when they thought no one was listening, but I caught fragments of their conversations. They believed the caretaker lived in the attic, that it controlled Mrs. Hawthorne, that it was the reason for all the strange things that happened there. Every night, Mrs. Hawthorne performed strange rituals. She'd light candles, dozens of them, and arrange them in a circle in the living room. She'd chant in a language I didn't understand, her voice rising and falling like the wind through the trees. The first time I saw it, I was frozen. Her rituals grew more bizarre. Her voice was more frantic. I rushed back, scared, but I noticed that the other children were suddenly getting weaker. They were pale, their eyes sunken, and they moved even slower than before. It was as if the life was being drained out of them. One day, I found an old photograph. It was of Mrs. Hawthorne standing in front of the house, but something was off. The photo was dated 1952, but Mrs. Hawthorne looked exactly the same. No wrinkles, no signs of aging, her skin still exactly the same. My heart raced as I realized that something strange was afoot. I looped in Jake, and that night we planned to see the attic. The candles were already lit, and Mrs. Hawthorne was in the middle of one of her rituals. Her chanting was louder, more frantic, and the house seemed to pulse with a dark energy. The shadows on the walls twisted and writhed, almost if they were alive. We waited until Mrs. Hawthorne was deep in her ritual, and then we snuck up. The attic door was locked, but we could hear something moving behind it. Jake was a god at breaking locks, and I gave him my hairpins.
Jake, hurry! We need to do this before she notices.
I'm trying, Mia. Just keep watch. And then it came undone. We went inside, amidst the darkness and the strange smell. Jake had brought a match, and as soon as he hit it, we saw a figure in the sparks. It wasn't human or an animal. It was easily over 10 feet tall and had red eyes. Before we could even get out of the jolt, I realized that the smell was of gasoline, and before I could stop Jake, he threw the almost burnt-out stick on the floor to pull out a new one. That was it. A terrifying blaze swept through the attic, and in the middle, we saw the demonic figure wail. We turned to run, but Mrs. Hawthorne was already there, her eyes pitch black and her mouth twisted into a snarl.
You think you can escape? You're mine!
Jake pushed me towards the stairs while he charged at her. Run, Mia! I'll hold her off! I resisted, but Jake pushed me down the stairs. I looked back just in time to see the black entity and Mrs. Hawthorne merge into one. Suddenly, huge claws grew out of her fingers as the fire surrounded her. The fire roared, consuming the attic, but it was too late. I ran to the other kids for help, but as I approached them, I stood in shock. They all had entirely pitch black eyes as well, and then it made sense why no one had told us about those kids earlier. They were all dead as well. As the fire took over the house and I heard Jake's screams, I cried and ran out for help. I didn't stop until I reached the nearest house. The neighbors called the cops, but by the time they got there, the house was nothing but ashes. They found the bodies of the other children buried in the ground behind the house, their eyes missing, but they never found Jake or Mrs. Hawthorne. It was as if they'd vanished into thin air. Everyone was afraid of believing in me till the bodies were found, but they had no explanations. I still remember it clearly, even after a decade, about what I saw that night. I just pray that Jake found his peace. Working the night shift at 7-Eleven had its perks. The quiet hours gave me time to think, to plan out my future, or at least that's what I told myself. But then there was Carl. He started showing up a few months ago, always parking across the street, just sitting in his car, staring at the store. At first, I didn't pay much attention. People did weird things at night, and maybe he was just another insomniac who liked to watch the world go by. But then he kept coming back, every night. Same car, same spot, same unsettling stare. He never came in, never bought anything, just watched. Who the hell does that? My unease grew into paranoia. I'd catch myself glancing out the window every few minutes, expecting to see his car. And sure enough, there he was, like clockwork. It got to a point where I couldn't focus on anything else. One night, I decided enough was enough. I wasn't going to let some creep mess with my head, so I walked out of the store, my heart pounding in my chest, and approached his car. "What the hell are you doing out here every night?" He looked at me, his face expressionless, and said, "Just waiting for someone." "Waiting for who? You've been sitting out here for weeks. What the hell are you waiting for?" Without another word, Carl started his car and drove off. I stood there in the cold, watching his taillights disappear into the night, feeling more unsettled than ever. But the next night, he was back. That's when things started getting really strange. It wasn't just at work anymore. I'd leave the store after my shift and feel eyes on me, like someone was watching from the shadows. I'd turn around quickly, expecting to see Carl's car, but there'd be nothing. Then it followed me home. I'd sit in my apartment, every creak and groan of the building sending my heart racing. I'd check the locks 3, 4, 5 times, convinced someone was outside my door. The man was driving me paranoid. "You're losing it, man. Get a grip." But I couldn't. It was like he had wormed his way into my mind, making me doubt everything. I started avoiding mirrors, afraid of what I might see looking back at me. My sleep was broken by nightmares, visions of someone standing over my bed, just watching. Desperate for answers, I started digging into the history of the area, trying to find anything that could explain Carl's behavior. That's when I stumbled upon the old news article at the local library. They detailed a series of violent crimes from years ago, murders, all connected to a 24-hour convenience store just like mine. The killer had never been caught, but the stories all had eerie similarities. Victims stalked, watched, mentally harassed, then attacked late at night. Jesus, what if he's not just watching the store? What if he's watching me? I became obsessed with the idea that Carl was connected to those murders. My paranoia spiraled, turning my every thought into a potential threat. One final night, it all came to a head. I was stocking shelves when the power went out. The store plunged into darkness, and my heart stopped. I reached for my phone, but the screen remained black. Dead. No, not now. I fumbled for the flashlight we kept behind the counter, the beam cutting through the darkness. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Someone was inside the store with me. I tried to stay calm, tried to think rationally, but the panic set in like a vice, squeezing every rational thought from my mind. "Who's there?" No answer. I heard the footsteps again, closer this time. I backed up, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. The beam caught movement, a shadow darting just out of sight. Then he was on me, a dark figure, faceless in the shadows, knocked the flashlight from my hand. I fought back, blind and desperate, feeling my strength waning as the figure overpowered me. He pinned me down, something cold and sharp pressed to my throat. that was it. I accepted that Carl had got to me in the dark. But just as I felt the pressure increase, there was a loud bang, and the weight lifted off me. I heard footsteps, frantic, someone shouting my name. The lights flickered back on, and I saw Carl standing over the body of the man who attacked me, a gun in his hand, a look of grim determination on his face. Carl? What the hell? He's been watching you, waiting for the right moment. I was too stunned to speak. Carl holstered his gun, breathing heavily. I'm an undercover detective. I've been tracking this guy for weeks. I needed him to make a move, and I used you as bait. Hope you don't mind. You used me? I didn't have a choice. He would have killed again if I didn't stop him. It hit me then. The real terror wasn't the thought of being watched. It was the realization that I had been living under the shadow of death without even knowing it. Carl hadn't been watching me. He'd been watching the killer, waiting for him to strike. As the paramedics arrived, Carl walked out into the night, leaving me to process what had just happened. The store was quiet again, but it would never feel safe, not after knowing how close I came to being another victim in the darkness. It was the peak summers. Adriana and I were desperate for a break from the suffocating heat, so we decided to hit up the local water park. It wasn't anything fancy, but it had a few slides and a lazy river, which is all we needed. We just wanted to cool off, click some sizzling pics for the gram, and have martinis. We headed to the changing room and slipped into our swimsuits. I remembered laughing at Adriana struggling with the knot on her bikini top. The changing room was empty, or so we thought. Soon we went out to the pool area, ready to enjoy our day. The sun was blinding, bouncing off the water and creating a shimmering, almost surreal effect. We spent hours letting the cool water wash away the stress of the week. But our carefree day took a dark turn when I reached into my bag for my sunscreen and found an unmarked envelope sitting on top of my towel. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't noticed it earlier. It wasn't there when I put my things in the locker.
Adriana, did you put this in my bag?
Adriana looked at the envelope, confusion and concern etched on her face.
No, Jen. What is that?
I opened the envelope, and my stomach dropped. Inside were photos of us changing in the locker room. The angles were creepy, taken from multiple angles, like someone had been watching us through a hidden camera. I felt sick.
What the hell?
Panic set in. Adriana's face turned pale, and we both knew we had to report it. We found the guy in charge of the facility, a middle-aged man named Victor. He had this greasy, slick-back look and a cigarette dangling from his lips. "You girls having a good time?" His tone was condescending.
Someone put cameras in the changing rooms. We found these photos in my bag.
Victor looked at them, quite astonishingly, and let out a smirk.
How do I know you didn't click this to file fake charges against the property? Girls like you love to make a big deal out of nothing.
I couldn't believe it. He was brushing us off.
This isn't nothing. Someone is stalking us.
But Victor wasn't listening. He waved us away, dismissing our concerns like we were annoying flies. We stormed out, furious and terrified. We had no idea who was behind it or what they wanted. That's when the strange thing started happening. My phone started receiving anonymous calls, but no one would speak on the other end. Just heavy breathing, like whoever it was enjoyed knowing they were scaring me. Then, when I reached the locker, I found my favorite red bra was missing. It had been there before we went to the office to file a complaint, and then Adriana rushed in with tears in her eyes, saying that she was certain that someone was following her.
Let's leave. What if they upload our videos on the internet? We need to find the stalker and we need to find him right now.
We decided to take matters into our own hands. We couldn't rely on Victor or anyone else to help us. We needed to catch this creep ourselves. So we set a trap. The plan was simple. We'd go back to the water park hoping to lure the creep out. Only this time, we carried our pepper sprays as well, hiding them under our swimsuits. The rush hour was dying down and many people had started to leave. We had left our bags out in the open, deliberately, hoping the stalker couldn't resist snooping through them. Adriana pretended to go to the washroom and hid behind a slide, while I went away and pretended to be busy applying lotion. Within a few minutes, a tall, bulky man passed by our bag and dropped in an envelope. I charged instantly, and by the time Adriana arrived, I was attacking him with pepper spray. My blood ran cold when he turned, and I realized that it was Victor himself. He wept as the spray burned him, and we raised alarm, making others collect there.
You bastard!
He froze, and for a moment I saw fear flicker in his eyes, but then he recovered, that arrogant smirk returning. Few good men in the crowd punched him and held him down till the cops arrived and cuffed him.
You think you've caught me? You girls have no idea what you're messing with.
But as they took him away, he turned to us, his eyes gleaming with malice.
It's too late, you know. Those videos are already online. And now, everyone will see you.
The ground seemed to fall out from under me. It was any girl's worst nightmare. Victor had posted the everything that he had secretly captured for the world to see. There was nothing we could do to take it back. As we walked out of the park, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, was still watching. Be safe. Willow and I, knowing our prom was just around the corner, had sworn to each other that we would look our very best. It was this pact that we found ourselves in the gym, sweating it out through the circuits and pushing each other to just lift that little bit more every day. It became a routine with us, the girls at the gym, bonding time, as much as it was about filling each other in on the gossip of the day and toning muscle. The gym was a mix of regulars and newbies, all of us working toward our own goals. There was this one guy, Ben, who seemed to be there almost as often as we were. He was tall, with messy hair and an awkward demeanor. Now and then I'd look up and see him watching me in a workout or something, but every time I looked up, he would look away quickly. I shrugged it off, as benign, gyms full of people who take sneak peeks at each other, are they not? Anyway, he didn't look like somebody to say something, so I didn't give it much thought. But then, one day, Willow had a cold. She texted me in the morning saying she was sorry for not making it to the gym. I almost thought I could skip it too, but the pouring rain outside gave me not much else to do after school, so I decided to stick to our routine and go alone. When I arrived at the gym, it was dead silent. The buzz of conversation that typically filled the air was replaced by the hum of steady rain and the sound of it splashing against the windows, metal weight against metal weight. I went upstairs into the women's section and realized by 5 p.m. that I was all alone up there. It was kind of creepy, but I enjoyed the privacy. I decided to stay a little longer, pushing myself harder than usual. When the squats were done, I moved on to the bench press. Usually, I would take 2 dumbbells and leave it at that, but today was going to be different. I wanted to make a point, so I used the bar instead. And, as expected, I started on the light side and went up from there. I was in the zone, focusing on my form and breath, when I realized someone had taken up a position by my feet. My heart missed a beat as I looked up to see Ben hovering awkwardly near the bench. But there he was, with the same nervous grin, and for a moment I thought about ignoring him. But he made a little small talk about the weather or some insane thing like that, and then asked if he could help me with the weights. It was not an uncommon sight for people to spot at the gym, so I didn't think much of it. I thought he was perhaps only being courteous and nodded, allowing him to stand behind my head as I gripped the barbell. "Need a hand?" he inquired, voice surprisingly steady.
Sure.
I replied, trying to keep it as casual as possible. Ben placed his hands on the bar and helped me lift it off the rack. It seemed fine at first. He added just a little more weight after every set of 5 reps, pushing me just a little farther than I was used to, but nothing too extreme yet. I could feel the burn in my arms, the kind of pain that seemed rewarding for a good workout. Then, it got heavier. The barbell felt heavier than anything I'd ever lifted and fought against my muscles.
You can handle it.
I told myself just one more rep, but as I let down the bar, my arms wouldn't push it back up.
Okay, I'm done.
I said, fully expecting Ben to be able to assist me as I racked the barbell. Instead, he added more weight, and now his face was unreadable. "Don't worry, I've got you," he said with his hands on the bar. "We'll lift it together." An alarm bell rang inside my brain, and I really should have stopped, but I didn't want to look weak. So I let him guide me through another lift. My arms were shaking, and my breath was coming in short gasps when he did. "So, Vinny, will you go out with me?" He mumbled, and in a strange kind of intensity. I froze, my heart pounding for a different reason now.
No.
I managed to say, my voice shaky. I just wanted to get the barbell back on the rack and get out of there. And just as quickly as he had held onto it, Ben let go of the barbell. The immediate lack of support was horrific. The weight came crashing down toward me, and I had to summon every ounce of strength to keep it from smashing my throat. Panic set in as my arms screamed in pain, unable to keep it up because I now realized I couldn't do it on my own. As I thought I had finally cashed out my chips, Ben grabbed the barbell and racked it. I screamed at him.
What were you thinking? Are you crazy?
He began laughing in a way that went through to my bones. "Relax, Vinny, that was just a prank," he responded with a continued grin. "No way I was going to let you get hurt." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My whole body was trembling, not just from the workout, but from fear. This wasn't a joke. This was something else entirely. I didn't say a word as I quickly grabbed my things and bolted out of the gym. The rain outside was now a welcome cold shower compared to the heat of panic that had taken over. When I got home, I was still shaking. I told Willow everything, and she immediately wanted to report Ben, but I was terrified. What if he followed me and turned into some kind of crazy stalker? I couldn't risk it, so I begged her to let it go. We both knew the gym was off limits for me from now on. From that day on, I never went back to the gym. The memory of Ben and his terrifying prank still haunts me. I'm grateful that I'm safe, but I'll never forget the fear that I felt that night. I got a text from some girl late last night.
Do not click on this link.
It said. It was a shortened YouTube URL. Usually I ignore such messages, but yesterday was a bit rough and I wasn't in the mood to write the novel which I was working on. So I clicked on that link. It redirected me to YouTube where a video about some circus from the 60s in Bombay started playing. "Do not forward the video to 2:21 minutes" was written in the title. So, of course I did. I shouldn't have done that. At exactly 2:21 seconds, I paused the video. Everything looked quite ordinary. A black and white footage, 3 elephants in the back, a few dwarves ahead, and a bunch of people around. But right in the center was a large drum, on which was written, Comment 13. Curiously, I scrolled down to the comment number 13 in that video, which linked to another YouTube video. I've recently started my YouTube channel where I post funny writing advice. The link from that comment took me to my own video, one which I had uploaded 3 days ago. It was an informative video, a rant on the current status of the publishing industry, but right from the start, something was different. It started with a few glitches in the video, and then some random numbers and letters started popping up in it. And then my voice suddenly grew heavier and heavier. And then midway into it, the screen went black. The numbers and letters that were dancing around, they soon converged into a new message. It was my home address. I instinctively shut my laptop and walked out of the room. That was a whole new level of creepy fascination someone could have online. How she got my address, I didn't know. I had no clue as to how she toyed with my video. It should have been impossible. I walked into the kitchen and filled myself a glass of orange juice. When I was back in my room and opened my laptop, I had another message from the same girl.
Hope I didn't scare you.
It read. I wondered if I should reply or not, but I had a bunch of unanswered questions, so I had to ask. I put my orange juice to my side and started chatting with her. How did you know my address? How did you tweak my video? There was no reply for a few minutes, and then I got an image. A rather explicit image of a rather gorgeous woman with a rather voluptuous body. Long, dark hair, white tank top over yoga pants, shades. screamed the complete Instagram it girl.
What do you think about me?
She texted next, but I couldn't get my eyes off her image, her top in particular. Not staring at the tatas, but there was a symbol in the center of her top which freaked the daylights out of me. It's a symbol I made for the purposes of my novel. The novel isn't published yet. Hell, it isn't even complete yet. I haven't even shared the draft with anyone at this point. Then how the hell did she know the exact symbol and even got it printed on her top? I lost it. I barely abuse girls, but this time my messages started and ended with swears. I need answers. Tell me the answers.
Don't be afraid, babe. It's our little secret.
The fuck it is? Did you hack my computer? I'll go to the police.
Hack a computer? I barely even know how to work PowerPoint.
How do you know my address? How did you get that symbol?
I guess.
You guessed? Nostradamus just rolled in his grave. Tell me, who the hell are you and how are you doing this?
I just want to be your friend, babe.
Stop calling me that. Just answer my questions.
I already told you the answer.
What? Where?
You didn't read the 13th comment on that YouTube video completely, did you?
I was pissed off. I didn't even know if it was a girl or some scamster who was trying to blackmail me. I went through the entire process again and landed at that circus video, scrolled down furiously to the 13th comment. The last time I was at it, it just had the YouTube link to my tempered video. This time, there was a text. Don't scroll down to the 20th comment. I wondered how she was doing this. I scrolled down immediately to the 20th comment, which read, "Don't click on this link." I clicked on that link and arrived at my own blog from 7 years ago, on which there was a suggested edit now, which said, "Don't go into the edit logs of this blog." I rushed to the edit logs, just wanting this mystery to end, and it did. In the edit logs, a previous version of that answer existed, which just read this: "Thank you for the delicious orange juice." I looked to my right. My glass of orange juice was empty, and I had not had a single drop of it. Working the night shift at the 7-Eleven store was usually uneventful. The hours dragged on, the hum of the fluorescent lights and the soft buzz of the cooler providing the only background noise. I liked the solitude, though. It gave me time to think, to clear my head after long days. But that night, something changed. It was around 2 a.m. when he walked in, a man in his late 40s, maybe early 50s, with graying hair that fell messily around his face. He wore a threadbare coat, the kind that had seen too many winters, and his eyes, sharp and restless, darted around the store as if he was searching for something, or someone.
Evening.
He nodded at me, a strange smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He moved slowly, almost deliberately, as he picked up a few items, a pack of gum, a bottle of water, and a newspaper. When he approached the counter, there was something unsettling in his demeanor, something I couldn't quite place. He set the items down, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a coin. It was old, worn, the kind of coin you'd find in a dusty antique shop. He held it up between his thumb and forefinger. Pick a side, heads or tails. I stared at him, unsure if he was serious. He didn't look like the type to be joking around, though. There was an intensity in his eyes, a barely concealed edge that made me uneasy.
No thanks. I'm not much of a gambler.
He ignored my refusal, flipping the coin between his fingers, the metal catching the light with each rotation. It's just a game, honey. Heads or tails. My pulse quickened. His insistence was unnerving, and the way he stared at me as if waiting for something made my skin crawl. I glanced at the door, wondering if I should call someone, but the streets outside were deserted.
I really don't want to.
He suddenly pulled an apple out of his coat pocket and placed it on the counter with a quiet thud. It was a deep red, the kind that looked polished and perfect, but its presence felt wrong, like it didn't belong there. pick a side." His voice was calm, almost soothing, but it had an undercurrent of something dark. My stomach twisted in knots, the air in the room growing thick with tension. I didn't want to play his game, but I could tell he wasn't going to let me refuse. Something about his eyes told me that this wasn't a game at all.
Fine. Heads.
He grinned, a twisted, joyless smile, and tossed the coin into the air. It spun slowly, as if time had slowed down, and then landed on the counter with a soft clink. Heads. Huh, you're lucky.
What was that all about?
He looked at me, his smile fading, replaced by a cold, distant expression. I used to be a gambler, obsessed with fate. This coin, it was my lucky charm. It won me my first $100, and then we never looked back. But one day, it betrayed me. I lost everything. Money, respect, my life. But then the coin told me, inflict pain upon everyone who laughed at me. I shot every player at the table. Every single one of them. The coin said it was their time, not mine. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't just a story. The way he spoke, the conviction in his voice, it was terrifyingly real. Worse yet, I had heard this story before, one which our town considered a forgotten legend. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Since then, I've carried out the ritual every time someone guesses wrong. He tapped the apple on the counter with a finger, his eyes locking onto mine. I felt cold, the blood draining from my face. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs felt like lead. He stood up straight, pocketed the coin, and walked towards the door. She was Cynthia. With that, he left, the door swinging shut behind him. I stood there, frozen, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My eyes fell on the apple, still sitting on the counter. I reached out hesitantly, my fingers trembling as they brushed against it. But when I picked it up, it was no longer the pristine fruit he had placed. The apple suddenly turned half-eaten, its flesh rotten and brown, as if it had been decaying for weeks. I dropped it in horror, backing away, my mind racing. The name, Cynthia, it struck a chord in me. I had heard the stories before, the urban legends of Bloody Jack, a serial killer from the 60s who had been obsessed with fate, flipping coins to decide the lives of his victims. He had been shot dead by police after calling them to a scene of his final murders, 6 men with whom he played poker. The police found him sitting by the bar, an apple in hand, waiting for them. The last word out of his mouth was his wife's name, Cynthia. My breath came in shallow gasps as I pieced it together. The man, the coin, the apple, they weren't just legends, but a reality. It's been 10 years since that Christmas Eve, but the memory of it still haunts me like a shadow that never leaves. I was just a kid back then, only 8 years old, and still reeling from the loss of my mom. She'd been everything to me. The warmth in our house, the laughter in the air. When she passed, it felt like the world had lost its color. That December, I did something I've never told anyone. I wrote a letter to Santa, asking him for just one thing, to bring back my mom again. I knew it was silly. I was old enough to doubt Santa's existence, but I was desperate. I wanted her back so badly, it hurt. On Christmas Eve, I placed the letter on my windowsill. But that night, as I lay in bed, something strange happened. A shadow appeared on the wall, growing larger and darker until it took the shape of a man. No, not a man. It looked like Santa, but not the jolly figure I'd imagined. This shadow was tall, looming, its eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. "Santa?" The shadow nodded, though it didn't speak. I was terrified, but also hopeful. I didn't know what was happening, but I felt like my wish was about to come true. The shadow stretched out a hand, and suddenly she was there. My mom, standing at the foot of my bed. I could hardly believe it, but something was wrong. She wasn't the mom I remembered. Her skin was pale, almost white, like rice paper. Her eyes were dull, lifeless, and she didn't smile or speak, just stared at me with an intensity that made me shiver. But I didn't care. She was here. She was real. I jumped out of bed and hugged her, but she didn't hug me back. Her arms hung limply at her sides, cold as ice.
Mom, you're back. I missed you so much.
She nodded slowly, her movements stiff. I tried to talk to her, to tell her about everything she'd missed, but she barely responded. When we went down for breakfast the next morning, she sat at the table, staring at the food but not touching it. I couldn't wait to see Dad's reaction, but it was strange.
Dad, isn't it great? Mom's back.
He looked at me, confused. Ethan, what are you talking about? That's when I realized that he couldn't see her. She was only visible to me. As the days passed, my mom started asking me for strange things. She wanted locks of my hair, bits of fabric from my clothes, even my favorite toys. Every time I gave her something, she seemed to become more lifelike. Her skin gained a faint blush, and her movements became smoother. But with each gift, something darker crept into her eyes, a twisted gleam that scared me.
Mommy? Why do you need these things?
She didn't answer, just smiled a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And every night she would whisper to me in a voice that was not quite hers.
Soon, Ethan. Soon. We'll be together forever.
One night, she told me that we were going to celebrate her birthday. She led me to the living room, and what I saw there made my blood run cold. The room was filled with symbols I didn't understand, drawn in chalk on the walls and floor. Candles flickered in a circle around us, casting eerie shadows that danced like living things.
Mommy? What is this?
She smiled again, that twisted smile, and began chanting in a language I didn't recognize. The room seemed to close in around me, the air thick with the smell of burning wax and something else, something rotten. As she chanted, her voice deepened, became distorted, until it wasn't her voice at all. It was something ancient, something evil. I tried to back away, but my feet wouldn't move. I was paralyzed, held in place by some invisible force. The symbols on the floor began to glow, and I felt myself being lifted into the air. My arms and legs were pulled taut, as if by invisible ropes, and I hung there, helpless, as my mom, no, the thing that looked like my mom, transformed before my eyes. Her skin peeled away, revealing something dark and twisted beneath, a creature of nightmares. Its eyes glowed white, and its mouth stretched into a grin.
No, please stop!
It laughed. I knew then that this wasn't my mom. It was some demon, something ancient and terrible, wearing her face like a mask. Looking back, I now realized that I was probably its final offering, the last piece it needed to fully enter our world. Just as it was about to strike, the front door burst open. My dad stood there, his face pale with shock. He took one look at the scene before him and ran straight at the creature, clutching a silver cross in his hand.
Get away from my son!
The creature hissed, recoiling from the cross. My dad grabbed me, pulling me down from the air, and we ran. The thing that had been my mom screamed in rage, but it couldn't follow us beyond the circle of symbols. We left the house that night, never to return. We stayed at a relative's place for some time before Dad shifted to a different city. He went to the house just once to gather our belongings, but he remembered that there was nothing there. Whatever that creature was, it was gone. I don't celebrate Christmas anymore. I know for a fact that Santa is not real, but something like Santa is, just that it grants you wishes of a darker kind. I had always been the fastest in the pool, and I knew I would take home the gold at the inter-school championship. My dream was to be on that podium, hearing the crowds roar and feeling the medal's weight around my neck. But a week before the great event, during routine practice, I felt a sharp pain shoot through my shoulder. It's only a cramp, just a cramp, I told myself. It was not excruciating enough to stop me from swimming, but I knew that any weakness on my part would cost me the win. It was my best friend, Peter, a fellow swimmer, who noticed when I cringed in the middle of stretching. Having an admission from me about the cramp, he suggested I should try some deep tissue massages to relax the muscle. He even gave me an address, saying it was the best place in town for that kind of thing. Massages weren't my thing, but Peter insisted that it would make a world of difference. So I made an appointment. The massage parlor was hidden on a quiet street. It had nothing shiny about it. But as soon as I walked through the door, I felt like I'd entered another world. A blend of lavender and something citrusy filled the air, and blue lights were beaming from every corner. Then came a beautiful receptionist with such a warm smile, very inviting. She showed me to the room at the back. Pictures of serene landscapes hung in the room, and the muffled sound of breaking ocean waves convinced me that I was someplace far away from championship pressures. I had barely settled in when a blond man entered the room. He flashed me a warm smile, one that instantly made me feel at home. "I'm Carlos, your masseuse for today," he said, while holding out a glass of fresh orange juice. At that moment, I was unclear whether I should drink it before or after the massage, so I took a sip. It was fresh, just as I needed. "Go on and lie down, Liam," he said very soothingly. I obeyed him, lying down on the soft mattress as he turned the lights down even more. The waves in the background increased, and I could almost feel the sand beneath my feet. Even as Carlos set to it, I could feel my muscles unwinding slowly under his touch. "You've got quite a cramp in your shoulder," he said, his hands working quite skillfully over the sore spot. "Yeah, that's why I'm here. I can't afford to let it slow me down. I've got a championship to win," I replied, my voice muffled by the pillow. Carlos stopped and continued. "You know, there's this ancient technique I could try, acupuncture. It had always proved very effective in such cases of pain. You're going to feel a small sting, but afterward, it'll be as if the cramp never was there." I paused. I couldn't stand needles, yet there was something about this place. The lights, the sounds, the calming presence of Carlos that made me feel safe. "Okay, let's do it," I agreed. Carlos promised it wouldn't sting much, and it didn't. Just a small prick when he inserted the needle. The feeling was quite strange, almost as if an electric current ran through my body, but by no means unpleasant. Then, I could feel myself slipping away, submerging in the weariness of weeks of heavy, intensive training. That's when the dream began, or rather, the worst nightmare. In the dream, I was alone on the deserted beach, waves licking my feet. Only this water wasn't the usual deep blue. It was some sickening, dirty, dark red. The sky overhead was cracked and broken, lightning flashing in with a deafening roar. With each flare of lightning, the sound that reverberated sent chills down my spine. A noise that sounded wet, a tearing noise, as of ripping open the flesh. Panicked, I started to run, desperately in need of a way off the beach. My feet pounded against the sand, but no matter how far I ran, I couldn't get away from the blood-red waves. Finally, I came across a figure on top of a lifeguard stand. It was Carlos, eating something, and as I drew closer, I realized with horror that it wasn't food. It was a human organ, blood dripping from his hands and mouth. Carlos shoot out a huge bloody grin, and I knew something isn't right. I shouted, my voice echoed along the deserted shore, and then I finally woke up. But I wasn't in the massage parlor anymore. Instead, I was lying in a hospital bed with a sharp throbbing pain in my stomach. My parents were there, obviously terrified and relieved at the same time. What happened?" I croaked, my throat dry. My mother took my hand, tears in her eyes.
When you didn't come home for 2 days, we called the police. They found you in the basement of a massage parlor, left to die.
The memories came flooding back, and I realized with a sickening jolt that the dream wasn't just a nightmare. It was an echo of the horror I had endured. Carlos had drugged me on the very table and lowered me into the secret basement where they collected organs from unsuspecting victims. The police said that Carlos and his gang had been selling organs on the black market. They've been doing it for years, taking into account only the young people like us who would make no difference if we went missing for a few days. Peter, my so-called friend, was in on the game too, and brought kids like me into their parlor. They sent him to a juvenile prison, while the rest of the gang members are behind bars now. But it didn't matter to me, as I looked up into the ceiling from my bed in that goddamn hospital. I had lost a kidney, something you lose and can never get back. I'd lost the dream of the championship, replaced by a nightmare that had become my reality. But as I closed my eyes, I heard those waves. I would never forget the sound of those blood-red waves. Moving from New York to a small town in Kansas was a big change. The pace was slower, the nights quieter, and everything felt, well, emptier. But I needed the shift, a new job, a fresh start. One thing I wasn't willing to give up, though, was my gym routine. I'm a gym freak, and I take my workouts very seriously. So, naturally, finding a good gym was my top priority. I found one that met my expectations, a modest place with all the essentials. It wasn't fancy, but it had the equipment I needed, and it wasn't overcrowded. Usually I'd hit the gym around 6 p.m., but one night I got stuck at work late and didn't make it until 11 p.m. The place was almost deserted, just like the rest of the town. Only one other person was there, an older man who must have been in his 50s, maybe even older. He was ripped, massive biceps, broad shoulders, and a chest that looked like it had been chiseled out of stone. His hair was gray, and he had a beard to match. But it wasn't just his physique that caught my attention, it was the way he moved, with a confidence and ease that only comes from decades of dedication. I tried not to stare, but he caught me sneaking a look.
What are you watching over there, kid? Come on, spot an old man.
I hesitated for a moment, then walked over. There was something about him, a kind of old-school charm mixed with a strange intensity that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Sure thing, you got quite the setup here. He grinned and settled onto the bench press. I took my position behind him, hands ready to assist if needed.
Been at this for years. Competition, strict diets, no steroids though. Be natural and you'll live a long life.
There was a sincerity in his voice that made me believe every word. He pushed the barbell with steady, controlled movements, and I spotted him. After a few reps, he racked the weight and sat up, wiping the sweat from his brow.
You got a good smile, young man. You have my blessings. Tomorrow's gonna be a good day for you.
I didn't know what to say, so I just thanked him and finished my workout. Something about him lingered in my mind, though. He wasn't just fit, he was almost ageless, like he had discovered some secret to life that the rest of us were missing. The next day, I went about my business, but then, during lunch, something strange happened. A woman I've been locking eyes with at the coffee shop finally came up to me. She was flirtatious, her voice playful as she complimented my smile.
I've seen you around. You have the kind of smile that makes a girl want to know more.
We spoke for close to an hour and exchanged numbers. I was taken aback, but I remembered the old man's words from that night before. Tomorrow's gonna be a good day for you. Was this what he meant? That evening, excited and curious, I headed back to the gym. I wanted to thank him to see if he had more of those cryptic predictions. But when I arrived, the gym wasn't empty like the night before. 3 other people were there, but the old man was nowhere to be seen. I approached one of the guys who looked like a regular. Hey, do you know the older guy who works here? Gray hair, built like a tank? The guy looked puzzled for a moment, then his face paled. You don't mean Daniel, right? Man, he was a legend around here, but he died a few years ago. Heart gave out while he was benching, worded up too much. What's this about? I felt the blood drain from my face. No, that's impossible. I just spotted him last night. We talked. He was giving me advice about staying natural, saying tomorrow would be a good day. The guy's expression shifted from confusion to something darker, something closer to fear. He didn't believe me at first, but as I described more details, his skepticism turned into genuine concern. Together, we approached the front desk and convinced the security guy to pull up the footage from the night before. My heart pounded in my chest as we watched the grainy black and white video. There I was, alone, entering the gym, going through my routine. No sign of the old man. Then it got weirder. The tape showed me standing by the bench press, talking animatedly to nothing. No old man, just me, alone, acting like I was spotting someone invisible. What the hell? As we watched in stunned silence, something on the screen caught our eye. The barbell, the same one I had supposedly spotted Daniel on, started to move, lifting slowly into the air on its own. It hovered for a moment, then dropped back onto the rack with a clang that made us all jump. The room was dead silent, the weight of what we had seen hanging in the air like a thick fog. I felt like I was going to be sick. I spotted a ghost? The gym was eerily quiet after that. The three of us stood there, staring at the screen, too afraid to move, too afraid to speak. The realization that I had spent the night working out with the spirit of a dead man was more than I could handle. I stopped going to that gym the next day. I never thought I'd be navigating the dating world again at 30, but after ending a 5-year relationship with Mark, I needed a distraction. My friends insisted I try Tinder, so one Friday night I sat on my couch in my tiny Chicago apartment, swiping through profiles. That's when I matched with Leo. His dark hair, warm brown eyes, and easy smile caught my attention. His bio mentioned a love for jazz music and hiking, both passions of mine. We started chatting, and his messages were witty and engaging. After a week of texting, we decided to meet at a downtown cafe. I wore my favorite green sweater, the one that brought out my hazel eyes. Leo was even more charming in person. We laughed over lattes, sharing stories about our favorite concerts and travel adventures.
I can't believe you've been to the Montreux Jazz Festival. It's on my bucket list.
Maybe someday we can go together. His eyes held a hint of something deeper, but I brushed it off. After 2 more dates, I realized that while Leo was nice, I wasn't feeling a real connection. Perhaps I wasn't ready to dive into something new. I decided to take a step back. Instead of confronting the situation, I chose the cowardly route. I ghosted him. The guilt gnawed at me, but I hoped he'd understand. But a few days later, messages started coming in from unknown numbers. Hey, haven't heard from you. Everything okay? I ignored them, but the messages kept coming. Did I do something wrong? Please talk to me. Thinking about it would be a drag to explain everything to him. I blocked the numbers, but one morning I found a piece of paper tucked under my car's windshield wiper. I miss seeing your smile. My stomach dropped. How did he find my car? I parked 2 blocks away from my apartment specifically to avoid parking fees and thought it was anonymous enough. That evening, I found another note taped to my apartment door. We should talk. I scanned the hallway, but it was empty. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I double-checked that I locked the door behind me.
This is getting out of hand.
I called my best friend, Jenna.
I think Leo is stalking me. Wait, the Tinder guy? Have you told him to stop? I haven't replied to any of his messages. Maybe I should tell him I'm not interested.
I sent Leo a final message.
Leo, I'm sorry for the silence. I don't think this is going to work out. Please stop contacting me.
He replied almost instantly. Yeah, I figured. Wish you the best. His response was puzzling, but if it meant that he would stop following me, it was good. Over the next week, I found my mailbox stuffed with letters, all in the same handwriting. You're making a mistake. We belong together. Don't ignore me. One night, as I walked home from the train station, I felt someone watching me. Footsteps echoed mine. I glanced back but saw no one. I quickened my pace, heart pounding, and reached my apartment building safely. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a voicemail from another unknown number. You can't hide from me. Sleep was impossible. Every creak and groan of the building made me jump. I decided it was time to involve the authorities. At the police station, Officer Ramirez took my statement.
Do you have any evidence that it's this Leo guy?
I have the notes and voicemails. I believe it's him.
We'll look into it.
Feeling helpless, I started looking over my shoulder constantly. One morning, I found my car's windshield broken. That was the final straw. I installed security cameras at my apartment. That night, I settled into bed, clutching a baseball bat for comfort. Around midnight, a loud crash shattered the silence. My living room window was broken. A masked figure climbed through, and just as I nervously peered out, he lunged at me. Adrenaline surged. I swung the bat, connecting with his arm. He grunted but grabbed me, wrestling the bat away. I kicked and screamed, desperately trying to break free. In the struggle, I managed to hit the panic button on my phone's security app. A siren blared, startling the intruder. He bolted out the door, and soon neighbors started opening their doors. Police cars arrived. Officers swarmed the area. Officer Ramirez approached me. They reviewed the security footage. Though the intruder was masked, a small tattoo peeked out from under his sleeve, a familiar design.
Do you recognize this tattoo?
My breath caught.
That's Mark's tattoo. My ex-boyfriend.
Confusion flooded me. The officers located Mark at his apartment. When they arrested him, he was wearing clothes matching the intruder's. At the station, the truth unraveled. Mark confessed to everything. He had installed a spyware in my phone and kept track of my meeting with Leo. But once I ghosted Leo, he intensified his efforts to scare me, hoping I'd run back to him for comfort. I had to make you see that you still need me. I was protecting you from the dangers out there. I felt sick. He looked at me with a twisted sense of righteousness. I did it for us. In the aftermath, restraining orders were filed. Jenna moved in temporarily to help me feel safer, but the betrayal cut deep. I deleted the dating apps and focused on rediscovering myself, picking up old hobbies, reconnecting with friends, and embracing solitude. Life moved forward, and so did I, one step at a time. Christmas used to be my favorite time of year. The lights, the music, the cold air filled with the promise of snow, it all used to make me feel like a kid again. But that was before last winter, before the night in the cabin that changed everything. Now, whenever the holiday season rolls around, I'm filled with a deep, gnawing dread, and it all comes down to one thing: Santa Claus. It started innocently enough. My girlfriend Molly, our friends Nancy and Buck, and I decided to rent a cabin in the woods for a cozy Christmas getaway. The place was straight out of a horror movie, wooden, creaky, and nestled in the middle of nowhere. Buck even joked that it gave off Evil Dead vibes. We all laughed it off, figuring every cabin in the woods felt that way. While Molly and Nancy struggled to get a fire going in the ancient fireplace, Buck busied himself with dinner preparations. I didn't have much to do, so I wandered around the cabin, taking in the rustic surroundings. That's when I heard it, a hollow thud beneath my foot as I stepped on a corner of the living room. Curious, I crouched down and noticed a small metal hook embedded in the wooden floor. "Hey guys, check this out," I called over, and soon all four of us were huddled around as I tugged at the hook. With a creak, a hidden trapdoor swung open, revealing a dark, musty basement beneath the cabin. None of us were particularly eager to explore it, but we were too intrigued not to. The basement was filled with the kind of old junk that you'd expect: rusted tools, moldy boxes, and broken furniture. But then, we found something strange. A cardboard box labeled Confidential. Inside were a bunch of old videotapes, each one marked with an asset code like Sub 10 and Sub 12. Thankfully, the cabin had an old VCR, so we decided to watch one of the tapes. Buck popped in the tape labeled Sub 12, and we all settled onto the dusty couch to see what it was. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage of a man dressed as Santa Claus. He stood in front of the camera in what looked like the very living room we were sitting in and started singing, "Jingle bells." At first, we laughed at how bizarre and creepy it was, a Santa singing to an empty room in this creepy old cabin, but the laughter quickly died when Santa suddenly stopped singing. He stared directly into the camera, his eyes dark and hollow, and then he spoke. "Oh, can you hear her crying?" We all froze. The room seemed to drop 10 degrees as Santa slowly panned the camera to the other side of the room. There, tied to a chair, was a woman. She looked terrified. Her clothes were torn, a large chunk of her hair was missing, and her eyes were wide with fear. My stomach turned, and I could hear Nancy gasp beside me. Santa began to hum the "Jingle Bells" tune again. This time more slowly, more sinisterly, as he picked up a chainsaw from the floor. He walked over to the woman, dragged her chair out of the camera's view. For a moment, the screen just showed the empty room, but the sounds were horrific. The roar of the chainsaw, the woman's screams, the sickening noise of flesh being torn apart. It was all too real. We sat there, paralyzed with horror, as the sounds finally died down. Then, Santa walked back into the frame, his suit and face now splattered with blood. He leaned in close to the camera, grinning. "Subject 12 deceased. Merry Christmas." The tape ended abruptly, leaving us in stunned silence. My heart was pounding, and I could feel the cold sweat on the back of my neck. Buck was the first to speak, his voice shaky. "The numbers on the tapes, they're not just tapes, they're women. He's numbered them as his subjects." We couldn't stay in the cabin another minute. We grabbed our things and left, not bothering to contact the owner. It was obvious that whoever rented out this cabin had something to do with these tapes, these murders. We drove straight to the nearest police station and handed over the tapes. What we learned there made my blood run cold. The tapes reopened an infamous 30-year-old cold case, the Christmas abductions. 15 women had gone missing in those woods or along the nearby highway, and no one had ever found them. The cabin's owner was questioned, but he denied knowing anything about the tapes. Whoever the man in the Santa costume was, he was still out there, living free, with no remorse for the lives he'd taken. That night changed me. Now, every time I see Santa Claus, I don't see a jolly man bringing gifts to children. I see a monster. I hear the screams of that woman in the cabin, the grinding sound of the chainsaw, the twisted grin on that bloodied face. And I know that no matter how hard I try, I'll never be able to forget it. So when Christmas comes around, while others are hanging up stockings and decorating trees, I'm double-checking the locks on my doors and staying as far away from anything that resembles Santa Claus as I can, because I know the truth. Christmas can be a nightmare, and Santa is its darkest figure.